Chapter 505. The next day, Qin Yin ordered Ji Zhao to be put under house arrest for 20 years as punishment. In addition, the Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager, Ji Lin, was fined 6 months' salary for his incompetence. The 3 deputy managers, Qin Yong, Ouyang Ping, and Lu Yan, were all fined 3 months' salary. She also ordered Su Yu, the commander of the Qin Dragon Army, to go to the Heavenly Book Pavilion every 7 days to supervise the collection of heavenly tomes. It was also because of this small incident that Qin Yin, the Empress, gained a lot of control over the Heavenly Book Pavilion. In the afternoon, in the Longdan army camp, Lin Muyu placed the tool embryos one by one. He then took out his spiritual pen and opened the Fuxi Heavenly Book to the side. He began to study the other 7 divine texts. Among them, the one that interested him the most was the Heavenly Book of the Law of Life. The Fuxi Heavenly Book also recorded a series of keywords regarding the recovery of life. There were even some oracle bone inscriptions that Lin Muyu did not recognize. He had to study them carefully: life, XXXXX, warm current, green, XXXXX, melt, XXXXX, recovery, XXXX. It was conceivable that if he could write a high-level heavenly book of the law of life and use it in the casualty barracks during times of war, it would save a lot of manpower. Thus, he began to trace the outline of the divine text and studied it step by step. The spiritual pen was filled with mystic copper powder and he wrote the divine text on an exquisite shield. The mystic copper powder slowly seeped into the shield and produced a trace of dark force. Lin Muyu held the spiritual pen in his hand and felt a giant pen descending from the sky in his eye. The golden light exploded. He had already entered the realm of the holy pen, Amaterasu. However, after writing all the divine text, he did not enter any state of mind. This tool embryo could be considered broken. After writing 7 or 8 shields consecutively, his arm unconsciously became sore. Writing divine text was very exhausting. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Bai Yin said from outside, "Commander, Sir Qin Xiling from the weapon department of the Dragon Courage Army has sent someone to invite you to the mountain. He said that there has been progress in the research of the magic crystal cannon." "All right." In her excitement, Lin Muyu immediately threw away the shield in her hand and put on her armor. She led Bai Yin, Wei Chou, and nearly 100 light cavalrymen of the valiant Dragon Legion out of the city, heading straight for the mountain. Half of the mountain was about 5 kilometers away from Lanyan City. Because the magic crystal cannon was a secret research project, it couldn't be known by others. Moreover, it was extremely powerful, so Qin Xiling moved the research site to the foot of the mountain. When Lin Muyu and the others arrived, they saw a group of soldiers from the Longdan army camp patrolling from afar. The research site was under martial law, and normal people couldn't get close. Of course, as the commander of the valiant Dragon Legion, Lin Muyu naturally went straight in. At the foot of the mountain, the withered grass had been trampled out of shape. The surrounding snow had not melted yet, but Lin Muyu could see Qin Xiling sweating profusely as he adjusted a black heavy cannon with a group of technical officials from the Ministry of Works. When she saw the heavy cannon, Lin Muyu could not help but be dumbfounded. The cannon barrel was at least 10 meters long, and the cannon base was even bigger, comparable to 3 or 4 armored vehicles. Could this big guy really be used? "Lord Commander is here," an official reminded. Qin Xiling hastily turned around and saluted, saying, "The magic crystal cannon is starting to show results." "Oh?" Lin Muyu asked with a smile, "What kind of progress?" "You will know when you see it." Qin Xiling picked up a small red flag, pointed it at the mountain range in the distance, and said, "Aim, straight ahead, fill the cannon." "Yes." A few soldiers from the Longdan army camp carried a black ball and filled it into the cannon. Then, they filled in a round object made of black beech powder, and with a "dang" sound, the cannon was closed. Lin Muyu couldn't help being speechless. The principle of this double kick was too simple and crude. However, from the looks of it, it must have taken a lot of effort to forge this huge cannon. In this era where technology wasn't developed, it was already very rare to be able to do this. In the entire continent, probably only someone like Qin Xiling could make this kind of weapon. Prepare the fire. Qin Xiling raised his arm. Yes. A soldier picked up a torch. Fire, release. When the torch got close to the fuse on the cannon, it immediately ignited with a hua-la sound. Lin Muyu couldn't help but jump and unconsciously took a step back, as if she was afraid that this huge cannon would explode. Qin Xiling saw this and said, "Don't worry, even though the cannon exploded twice, it was because it was overheated. It won't happen again now." At this time, with a pang sound, the black beach powder ball inside the cannon exploded. With a strong propelling force, the magic crystal cannon with the storage crystal was sent out. Wang! The magic crystal was completely wrapped in the metal ball and directly flew into the distance. The purple lightning power in the storage crystal was faintly visible, but it was clearly not enough to detonate the magic crystal cannon. With a pang sound, the magic crystal cannon fell among the rocks at the foot of the mountain and rolled more than 10 meters away, but it didn't move at all. "What's going on, is it a squib?" Lin Muyu asked. Qin Xiling shook his head, "No, let's wait a little longer." After a full 10 seconds, the energy around the magic crystal cannon kept jumping. Finally, with a pang sound, it directly erupted into a mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. The biting cold energy shockwave reached nearly 100 meters, destroying the rocks and plants as if they were dry weeds and rotten wood. The resulting shockwave came head-on, blowing the cloaks of Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Bai Yin, and the other generals. Such a strong destructive power. Wei Chou was dumbstruck. Bai Yin also stood there dumbstruck, muttering, "Such a strong weapon, what are we still cultivating for? With these weapons, we can already unify the continent." Qin Xiling smiled with gratification. "It exploded, no, it's still not enough." Lin Muyu shook her head, "The explosion time is too long. It took so long for it to explode. I'm afraid that people with slightly higher cultivation would be able to quickly move out of the radius of the explosion. The power is indeed enough. Moreover, this magic crystal cannon doesn't have any calibrations at all. The accuracy of the cannon is equal to 0, and the killing power is negligible." Qin Xiling couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He cupped his fists and said, "Milord, this subordinate has really tried his best. What Milord has said, Xiling has already thought of it, but it's too difficult. Even if Milord gave us the blueprints, we still have to study it for many days and nights before we can improve it once. The explosion time can be shortened by increasing the purity of the storage crystal. As for calibration, Xiling still needs to continue studying the trajectory of the magic crystal cannon before we can improve it." Lin Muyu patted Qin Xiling's shoulder and said with a smile, "As for the magic crystal cannon project, I'll completely rely on Xiling. As long as you can improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it can be used in battle, you will be the #1 hero of the Qin Empire, even more outstanding than the contributions of commanders like me and Big Brother Feng. Moreover, I promise you, as long as you can improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it can be used in battle, I'll go to Her Highness Yan Yin and ask her to confer you the title of Duke. Even conferring you the title of King is not a difficult matter. After all, you have the Qin bloodline." Qin Xiling's face was full of surprise. "Really, milord? When have I ever lied to you?" Lin Muyu laughed loudly. "However, the research of the magic crystal cannon must be carried out in secret, especially the blueprints and so on. We can't let outsiders know, understand?" "Yes, the research of the magic crystal cannon has always been carried out in secret. Don't worry." Qin Xiling laughed and said, "This afternoon, the valiant Dragon Legion scouts hunted some wild rabbits halfway up the mountain. I ordered people to stew them in a soup pot. Since Milord has come, let's eat dinner together." "Okay." As a result, they stayed at the Magic Crystal Cannon research base to eat dinner. When night fell, Qin Xiling ordered a thick cloth to cover the entire fort, and then cooked a pot of rabbit meat in the camp. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Bai Yin, and the others sat around the table, drinking wine and eating meat without a problem. When they were half full, Qin Xiling cupped his fists and said, "My lord, the research funds for the Magic Crystal Cannon are almost used up. The iron we use to smelt the Magic Crystal Cannon is the hardest 1,000-year profound iron. Normal iron cannot withstand the high temperature when the cannon is fired, and there are many failures, so the expenditure is very large." I understand. Lin Muyu nodded. The Magic Crystal Cannon was developed in secret and hadn't been approved by the Ministry of Revenue. This meant that Lin Muyu had to fork out the funds himself. However, he was willing. After all, doomsday weapon technology like the Magic Crystal Cannon couldn't fall into the hands of Tang Lan, Su Muyun, or the hands of the demon race or the Yihe nation. He had to be careful. Opening the universe bag, Lin Muyu took out a thick pile of gold notes. Each note was worth 100,000 gold coins, the 10 million gold coins from selling the god-slaying seal. She slowly placed the 100 gold notes on the table and said solemnly, "This money can only be used for the research of the Magic Crystal Cannon. Xiling, do you understand?" Qin Xiling nodded heavily and said, "Don't worry, my lord, I won't touch a single copper coin. I'll directly hand it to the Valiant Dragon Legion's secretary for registration. Every expenditure will be recorded in detail, my lord can be at ease." I trust you." After handing over the 10 million gold coins, Lin Muyu sighed. She didn't even have the mood to drink anymore. Her headache now was how to get more money to research the Magic Crystal Cannon. From the looks of it, if she wanted to improve the Magic Crystal Cannon to the point where it could be used on the battlefield, she would have to spend at least 100 million gold coins. Even if she succeeded in improving the Magic Crystal Cannon, she would still need a large sum of money to continue smelting more Magic Crystal Cannons. Conservatively speaking, she would need to spend at least 200 million gold coins to make the Magic Crystal Cannon technology dominate the entire continent. However, if she could really unify the continent, what was 200 million gold coins? Chapter 506. In the Green Valley, birds flew and butterflies danced. It was a scene of beauty. Dense horse hooves spread out from the valley. Numerous human armies gathered and moved slowly. A battle of over 100,000 people was about to begin. Attack! The general at the front pulled out his long sword and roared at the sky. The sound of horse hooves became intense. The cavalry attacked while the infantry pushed forward. In a blink of an eye, the valley was drowned in blood and killing. Shouts surged into the sky as the two armies clashed. Just as the battle was in full swing, a person in the battle formation suddenly raised a longsword high up. The golden divine characters on the blade of the sword released a dense indigo light that soared into the sky. This was the power of heaven and earth triggered by a high-grade heavenly tome. In the next moment, numerous hurricanes formed in the air, turning into sharp blades that sliced the enemy cavalry. Within a few hundred meters, screams could be heard. Even the heavy armor was unable to block that sharp storm. One after another, more and more battle generals activated the power of the heavenly tomes. One by one, the earthly tomes, the heavenly tomes, and even the divine tomes were leading this battle. The canyon was already filled with blood. Magic crystal cannons, prepare. On the mountain range, bushes and branches were moved away, revealing the pitch-black cannons below. In the next moment, bang 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 sounds rang out incessantly, and purple mushroom clouds erupted in the battle. Countless pitiful soldiers were torn to shreds by the power of the magic crystal cannons, and some soldiers were even directly burned to ashes, turning into dust that fell to the ground. Lin Muyu woke up. So it was a dream, but the killing scenes in the dream were so real. I rubbed my temples. I had drunk too much last night, otherwise, I wouldn't have had such a nightmare. This dream was just too real, so real that it felt like it was really happening. Moreover, Lin Muyu knew that once the magic crystal cannons were completed, along with the appearance of magic crystal cannons and the appearance of high-grade heaven books, the dominance of martial arts would be challenged. Even God Realm experts wouldn't be able to protect themselves from the terrifying power of the magic crystal explosion. That might not be the case. He got up and washed up. What he had to do in the morning was simple. He continued to study the heavenly book. Lin Muyu took out a thin sword and started writing on it. His spiritual sense slowly seeped into the sword and he relaxed his body. Naturally, he entered the realm of the holy brush, Amaterasu. This time, he used dark silver powder as the material. Silver runes slowly appeared on the sword, flames from the endless purgatory. Heavenly flames descended from the heavens, burning away all the darkness, dancing with endless destruction, flames devouring the heavens. In the blink of an eye, when Lin Muyu finished writing the last rune, the image of a sky full of raging flames suddenly appeared in her mind with a buzz. Being in the middle of it, she felt the boundless heat and destruction. The law of fire was the most destructive and destructive law of the 8 great laws. She could feel the searing pain very vividly. The state of mind had already appeared. Whoosh! A ray of light shot into the sky. It was an orange ray of light. Spirit book. And judging from the intensity of the color, it should be a middle-grade spiritual book. Lin Muyu was overjoyed. Finally, he could become a book again. At this time, the sword in his hand was no longer an ordinary sword. It was a sword with a middle-grade spiritual book in it. A middle-grade spiritual book could be activated 7 times in a lifetime. Each time it was activated, it needed about 7 days to recover its spiritual energy. It was stronger than the human book, but weaker than the earth book. Overall, it was already very good. At the same time, the moment the book was completed, Lin Muyu felt that the battle energy in his body was greatly depleted. Although the heavenly book used the power of heaven and earth, it had to be guided by the strength of the inscriber. Therefore, inscribing a heavenly book was not only a mental task, but also a physical one. Lin Muyu sat cross-legged as strands of Fushi's divine power slowly circulated around his body. He was using the heavenly book's mental cultivation method to modify the purity of the spiritual energy in his body. The incomplete scroll of the dragon forging bone tempered one's bloodline and battle energy. Now that Lin Muyu had stepped into the Holy King realm and had achieved the initial success of the Divine Legacy realm, he could be considered to have reached the peak of cultivation among his peers. According to the Fushi Heavenly Book's mental cultivation method, he did not use the king's battle flame but the spiritual energy in his body to write the heavenly book. The more vigorous and pure the spiritual energy, the higher the probability of activating the power of heaven and earth. This was the true meaning of Fushi's heavenly book. On the contrary, Fushi's heavenly book only gave the basic rules of the heavenly book's divine text. As for the specific divine text, it did not mention a single word. Just as Lin Muyu was practicing the heavenly book's mental cultivation method, the strand of Fushi's divine power in his body seemed to be attracted and lingered around the mental cultivation method's spiritual energy as if it was protecting him. Lin Muyu could not help but be stunned. Could it be that Fushi's divine power and the heavenly book's mental cultivation method were of the same origin? So, if he used Fushi's divine power to write the heavenly book, what would the effect be? When he thought of this, he could no longer sit still. He quickly went to the table and took out a steel longsword. A row of heavenly book runes of the law of life flashed across his mind. Golden strands of Fushi's divine power enshrouded his fingers. His mind wandered and he quickly wrote down a rune, life. The warm current from the firmament heaven realm, the green rebirth of all things, melting the world of ice and snow, the endless power brings the revival of life, saving the dying and healing the injured. The holy pen's Amaterasu state had appeared. The state of mind had also appeared. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense was immersed in a flourishing brocade. The heaven and earth were filled with the power of life. Lush plants were growing healthily and birds were flying in the sky. The endless power of life spread rapidly between the heaven and earth, dyeing the desert and the Gobi Desert with layers of green. Today was the second time he had completed a book. Swoosh! A ray of earthy yellow light shot up from the steel sword and directly shot through the main hall and into the 9 heavens. He did not know if others could see it. Moreover, according to the intensity of the light, the color was relatively dim. It should be a low-grade earthly book. This was enough. It was the earthly book, a realm that many heavenly books inscribers could not pursue in their entire lives. Buzz buzz, the divine runes on the steel sword glowed faintly and slowly enshrouded. Lin Muyu was extremely excited. This was an earthly book. No, he could not hold it in anymore. He had to see the power of this earthly book of the law of life. He quickly walked out of the room. Outside, the cold wind was blowing. It was the middle of winter. Everything in the courtyard had withered. The flowers and plants in the pots had long died. Not far away, an old banyan tree had also lost all its leaves. Its withered branches swayed slowly in the wind. There was no one around. Lin Muyu could not help but secretly laugh. With a light flip of his palm, the king's combat flame surged into the blade. With a single thought, the embryo of the earthly book was activated. In an instant, a green light shot up into the sky. Endless life energy surged in the surroundings. In the next moment, a miraculous scene occurred. The withered wood sprouted, and the hissing sound of growth could be heard. Moreover, the withered flowers and plants in the flower pots also slowly took root and pulled out their teeth. In an instant, they had grown into pots of beautiful flowers. The banyan tree also grew up gracefully. The entire courtyard was like spring, overflowing with the air of spring. It was a stark contrast to the cold winter outside. Oh my God, Lin Muyu was dumbfounded. How mysterious was the power of the earthly book. It could actually bring everything back to life. If this courtyard was filled with wounded soldiers, wouldn't their wounds heal as quickly as the flowers and plants? Too amazing. Looking down, the divine characters on the blade slowly dimmed. After the earthly book was written, it could be activated 5 times in its lifetime. This sword had already been used once, so there were still 4 more times. It would take around 10 days for it to completely recover the power of heaven and earth. Lin Muyu's heart was filled with joy. At this time, Wei Chou pushed open the door and entered. Seeing the green in the courtyard, his face turned green. Oh my God, what is going on? Lin Muyu raised the sword in her hand. The law of life. This is the embryo of the earthly book? Wei Chou was shocked. Commander, you can write the earthly book? Yes, it's not simple, right? Wei Chou's face was filled with ecstasy. It's not just not simple, there aren't many people in the entire Dragon's Courage army that can write a heavenly book, but the commander can actually write an earth book. I'm afraid that if the people in the heavenly book pavilion knew about this, they would be angered to death. Not only is commander's martial arts cultivation far above theirs, but even your comprehension of the heavenly book inscriptions is far above theirs. Oh right, why are you here? Her Highness Yin has summoned you. She said that it's about how to handle Ji Zhao's 10 million Jinin coins. Oh. Lin Muyu smiled happily. It seems that Xiao Yin is planning to give me some benefits. Then, Commander, let's hurry over. Wei Chou beamed. Okay, let's go. Lin Muyu placed the freshly made embryo of the earthly book into her Qinkuan bag. Riding on Takshu, she brought Wei Chou, Bai Yin, and the others to Zhe Tian Palace. At the square outside Zhe Tian Palace, she saw another group of people. They were the people from the Lu residence in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The three siblings, Lu Heng, Lu Feng, and Lu Ying, were all there. Lu Feng was holding a long brocade box in his hand. There must be some treasure in it. Lin Muyu used the spiritual pulse technique to explore from afar. She found that the item in the brocade box was emitting a faint power of heaven and earth. It seemed to be a finished embryo. Commander Yu, you've come to Zetian Palace too? When Lu Ying saw Lin Muyu, her face was instantly filled with a happy smile. She was like a little girl who had a crush on her. She was shy, but she could not help but greet her. Lu Heng and Lu Feng were instantly displeased. However, Lu Ying was the apple of their father's eye, and she might not be willing to listen to her two brothers. Lin Muyu nodded and smiled. Her Highness has summoned me. Oh yes, why are the people from the Lu residence here at Zetian Palace? Lu Ying beamed with joy. Second brother just finished writing a middle-grade earthly book this morning. It's a book about the law of light. He also heard that your Highness practices the law of light martial soul, so he specially came to present this middle-grade earthly book to you. I see. Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, let's go in. Okay. Lu Ying was simple-minded and would not think of so many complicated relationships. Lu Feng was a natural genius. His innate talent in heavenly book inscriptions could be said to be the best in the empire. Furthermore, he had an elegant demeanor and had long been favored by the noble ladies in Lanyan City. However, the only person that Lu Feng seemed to be in love with was the Empress, Qin Yin. Although Lin Muyu was very confident that he would not lose to Lu Feng in terms of talent or martial arts, he was still somewhat uncomfortable when someone else coveted his girl. Wei Chou followed closely behind Lin Muyu with his hand on the hilt of his sword. He was only 5 meters away from Lu Feng. With such a short distance, Wei Chou was confident that he could pierce Lu Feng's throat in half a second before he could activate any heavenly book. However, Lin Muyu looked back at him with a slight reproach in his eyes. He could already see a trace of killing intent in Wei Chou. Wei Chou was also helpless. He grinned and removed his hand from the hilt of his sword. Chapter 507. The interior of Zetian Palace was brightly lit. Many people were present, including Tang Lan, Su Muyun, Xiang Yu, and Feng Jixing. Marquis Yunling requests an audience. The official outside the palace shouted. Lu Heng, Lu Feng, and Lu Ying from the Lu residence request an audience. Lin Muyu strode in and stood beside Feng Jixing. The rules of the empire were that the civil officials stood in one row and the generals stood in the other. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and Xiang Yu had the highest status in the empire, so she stood between Feng Jixing and Xiang Yu. Commander Yu is here. Qin Yin stood up and said with a smile, Ji Zhao colluded with the Yihe kingdom and sold many heavenly tomes inscription tool embryos to the Yihe kingdom. Thanks to Commander Yu's capture, the empire was able to avoid the risk of losing these heavenly tomes. However, the 10 million Jin Yin coins that Ji Zhao obtained is still here. On account of the Dragon's Courage Legion's meritorious service in capturing and investigating Ji Zhao and the fact that many of their men died in battle, I have decided to give these 10 million Jin Yin coins to Lin Muyu and the Dragon's Courage Legion as a reward. I hope everyone in the Empire will be like Commander Yu and put the Empire's interests first. Everyone was taken aback. Everyone knew that the Empress was biased towards Lin Muyu, but it was too blatant of her favoritism. Tang Lan hurriedly cupped her fists and bowed. Your Highness, please reconsider. 10 million Jin Yin dollars isn't a small amount. Furthermore, the treasury is empty and needs Jin Yin dollars for everything. If you give all of it to the brave Dragon Legion, I'm afraid the other commanders will be dissatisfied. Instantly, many of the Tang family's commanders cupped their fists to express their dissatisfaction. Su Muyun also frowned but didn't say anything. He had basically stopped interfering with Qin Yin's decisions in the imperial court. After all, with people like Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing around, there was no use even if he interfered. Qin Yin pondered for a moment and said with a smile, "Your Highness 7C King is right. Then I shall bestow 9,900,000 Jin Yin coins to the valiant Dragon Legion. Take 100,000 and distribute it to the commanders of the legions as a reward for their loyalty." Tang Lan. Qin Yin held onto the hilt of the heaven-suppressing sword and smiled. "There's no need to discuss this anymore. I've made up my mind." "Yes, Your Highness." Tang Lan didn't have anything else to say. Even though he and Qin Yin were both addressed respectfully as Your Highness, the weight of these two highnesses was obviously not the same. After the battle at Wildfire Plains, Qin Yin continuously promoted her trusted generals and civilian officials. Now, most of the officials in power in the 6 ministries were the Empress's people. Tang Lan's authority was also decreasing day by day, and naturally, he couldn't use force anymore. Step by step, Lin Muyu walked to the king's step and respectfully took the 99 gold notes from Shangguan Jingyue's hands. The Longdan army camp needed money, so he would not be polite with this money. At this moment, the 3 siblings, Lu Heng, Lu Feng, and Lu Ying, entered the main hall. Qin Yin smiled faintly. "May I know what the 3 siblings of the Lu residents have for me?" Lu Heng cupped his fists and said, "Reporting to Your Highness, my second brother, Lu Feng, wrote a medium-grade book of the Law of Light this morning. I also heard that Your Highness cultivates a martial soul of the Law of Light, so this book is perfect for Your Highness's cultivation. Only in Your Highness's hands will it be able to display its greatest power. My second brother wants to present this book to Your Highness." "Oh, is that so?" Qin Yin's gaze was gentle as she said, "Young Master Lu Feng is able to write a medium-grade book at such a young age. It's truly worthy of celebration. Guards, accept the book." "Yes." Shangguan Jingyue walked forward and took the brocade box. As if she understood Qin Yin's intention, she actually didn't have any intention of opening the brocade box. She held the brocade box and was about to hand it over to the Imperial Guard. Lu Feng stared blankly and was filled with disappointment. He hurriedly said, "Your Highness, young Master Lu Feng, is there something else?" Qin Yin calmly looked at him. "Your Highness." Lu Feng said, "Could it be that Your Highness doesn't want to see what the tool embryo is?" This subject stayed up all night and chose the most exquisite tool embryo to carve this medium-grade book. "Is that so?" Qin Yin faintly smiled. "Jingyue, open it and take a look." "Yes." Shangguan Jingyue opened the brocade box and shock flashed across her face. Inside the brocade box was an exquisite jade flute. The jade flute had faint golden divine runes floating on it. It should be an earth book written using profound gold powder. It was indeed written with great care. Lu Feng cupped his fists and said, "This subject knows that Your Highness is well versed in music, so you chose a musical instrument as the tool embryo. The jade flute's texture is brittle, and it is very difficult for it to contain too much spiritual power. But this jade flute's texture is of the highest quality. It was fortunate that it could be turned into a book. This is truly rare. I hope Your Highness will like it." Qin Yin smiled wholeheartedly, then, "Many thanks to young Master Lu Feng." Lu Feng sincerely bowed and said, "As long as Your Highness can show your happiness, all of this subject's efforts will be worth it. In addition, this subject has planted a strange flower called the violet orchid in the mansion's courtyard. When spring comes, it will germinate and bloom. At that time, if Your Highness is in the mood to admire the flowers, you can come to the Lu mansion to take a look." Lin Muyu couldn't help but frown. This Lu Feng really was a playboy. He simply used all kinds of skills to pick up girls without a cooldown. Motherf **, I can't tolerate this. If I knew this would happen, I would have let Wei Chou stab him to death with a sword. However, Lu Feng had underestimated Qin Yin too much. She wasn't the girl next door, but the Empire's princess who had personally experienced the chaos in Lanyan City. She was a girl who ascended to the throne after a narrow escape from death and personally experienced the war against the demon race. She had seen too much eagerness and too many hedonistic young masters. She knew where her heart belonged and understood that in this world, it wasn't about being with someone who treated her well, but rather, it was about working hard to be with someone she liked. It was very obvious that Qin Yin had long given her heart to Lin Muyu. Her defense against Lu Feng's offensive was simply 10,000. "Thank you, young master Lu Feng." Qin Yin smiled sweetly and said in a natural and unrestrained manner, "There are many flowers in the Zetian Palace's courtyard. I don't need to leave the Zetian Palace to see the arrival of spring, so there's no need to trouble young master Lu Feng." Lu Feng was startled, but he was still unwilling and continued to say, "Your Highness. I, Lu Feng, am willing to sacrifice my life for your Highness. If I, Lu Feng, can surpass the limits of writing a heavenly book, is your Highness willing to grant me a chance to have a meal alone?" Qin Yin was startled. As the Empress, there were some words that were difficult for her to say out loud. However, at this moment, Feng Jixing couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, "Lu Feng, that's enough. Her Highness is the monarch and you are the subject. I think you have already forgotten the difference between a monarch and a subject, right? Her Highness is the monarch of a nation, above tens of thousands of people. How can a hedonistic young master like you pursue her? If you say one more word, I will immediately order for you to be expelled from the Zetian Palace." Tang Lan frowned and said, "General Feng, the Lu residence is a heavenly book distinguished family in the Cangnan province. I hope that you can be lenient with your words. Besides, a fair and graceful lady is a gentleman's desire. Her Highness is in the prime of her youth and her peerless beauty is even more rare in this world. Even though Lu Feng is a subject, he is still young after all. It is understandable that he admires Her Highness' beauty. I hope that your Highness can understand." Qin Yin nodded and smiled, "Thank you for your trouble, Master Lan." Feng Jixing smiled, "It's just that. Her Highness Cultivation has already stepped into the Saint realm and her beauty will remain forever. Even if another 10 or 50 years pass, she will still be as beautiful as she is now. On the other hand, Lu Feng, what cultivation do you have? In another 50 years, you will be old and frail. Can you still match up to Her Highness who is as beautiful as a flower?" Lu Feng was startled. He clenched his fists and said, I will also start practicing martial arts." Qin Yin's beautiful eyes were like water as she looked at the officials in the palace. She said indifferently, "My lords, I know that many people are worried about Xiao Yin's marriage. They are worried that there will be no successor for the empire and that Xiao Yin will be lonely. In fact, there is no need for that. The person that Xiao Yin loves is my elder brother, Marquis Yunling, the commander of the Dragon's Courage Legion, Lin Muyu. If I marry, I will marry him. Everyone in the world knows about this. No matter if it is 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years, my heart will not change." Lu Feng was startled. He never thought that his pursuit would actually cause Qin Yin to reveal her feelings in front of the officials. At this moment, Lin Muyu spoke. He cupped his fists and said excitedly, "Your Highness. Since you have confessed, then I must say a few words." Feng Jixing almost vomited blood. He glared at him. "You still want to act cool at a time like this?" Lin Muyu took a few steps forward and said, "Your Highness is the ruler of a country. You are above tens of thousands of people and have an honorable status. If your Highness is willing to be with me, Lin Muyu, I will definitely not lose to anyone, no matter in which aspect. Since young Master Lu Feng has written an earth book for your Highness, then I have also written an earth book. I will offer it to your Highness here." As he spoke, he took out a steel sword from his universe bag and respectfully walked forward with it in his hand. Qin Yin giggled, her beautiful eyes full of affection. She held the long sword, and suddenly a stream of spiritual power surged on the engravings. Under the urging of the power, the engravings glowed with a pale yellow light. Earth Book. It really is an Earth Book. The officials were shocked. Tang Lan, Su Muyun, Xiang Yu, and the others all frowned. Everyone knew that Lin Muyu's martial arts cultivation was unparalleled in the world, but no one expected him to be able to write an Earth Book. What could this brat not know? Lu Feng's gaze stayed on the steel sword in Qin Yin's hand. His face became paler and paler. That brat actually wrote an Earth Book. Although it was a low-grade Earth Book, it was actually the most difficult Earth Book to write, the Life Book. Where did he come from? He could even write an Earth Book inscription in one go? On the other hand, Lu Ying's face was full of admiration and joy. Although she was slightly disappointed when she found out that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin were lovers, the moment she saw the light from the Earth Book, she fell in love again. In her heart, Lin Muyu was already the most outstanding man in the world. His martial arts cultivation was unparalleled in the world, and his Earth Book inscription was also extraordinary. Qin Yin carefully sheathed the sword and said with a smile, "Thank you, big brother Yu." At the side, Shangguan Jingyue asked, "What about the mid-grade Earth Book Jade Flute?" "Put it in the Heavenly Book Pavilion," Qin Yin said lightly. Yes. The court meeting ended just like that, but everyone had their own thoughts in their hearts. Lin Muyu was actually able to write an Earth Book. This was undoubtedly throwing a 500-kilogram boulder into the pool of water that was Lanyan City. There were many disputes in the Heavenly Book realm, and now it was becoming more and more chaotic. Chapter 508. Bailing City, the capital of Iha country. After a heavy snowfall, the entire 100-mountain city seemed to be wrapped in a layer of white cotton clothes. In the morning, tens of thousands of smoke slowly rose from the kitchen chimneys in the city. All the big shops opened their doors for business, and the city was extremely prosperous. At the rear of the 100-ridge city, the iron gate of the iron wall was wide open, and countless merchants came in and out. Ever since the Empire defeated the Qianfeng Corps of the demon race in the Battle of Wildfire Plains, the Iha Kingdom had also taken back all the cities in the southern ridge and resumed trade. In the mansion of the king of Zhenan, a group of maids walked leisurely, lighting incense burners. Although it was winter, they were still dressed in light muslin, revealing their graceful figures, but at the same time, all of them were so cold that their lips trembled. Qin Yi, who was wearing a leather robe embroidered with the insignia of a great commander, unfurled a scroll and carefully read the words on it. To the side, 3 civil officials and 3 military generals were waiting. "Have you bought the things?" Qin Yi raised his head and asked. Ji Yao shuddered. He cupped his fists and said, "Please forgive me, Commander-in-Chief. I didn't do my job well. Although we managed to buy the items, our people were hunted down by the Imperial Army after leaving Lanyan City. The entire army was wiped out, and all the gold notes and Heavenly Book artifact embryos were lost." "Lost?" Qin Yi frowned and said, "Which army discovered it?" "Lin Muyu's valiant Dragon Corps." "Humph. It's him again." A strong killing intent surged in Qin Yi's eyes as he said, "If we don't get rid of Lin Muyu, she'll eventually become a great threat to our Iha country." Sigh. "Since she's been discovered, I'm afraid that the Empire's control over the Heavenly Book's weapon embryos will be even stricter. It'll be extremely difficult for us to obtain another batch of weapon embryos." Long Qianlin cupped his fists and said, "Commander-in-Chief, it is said that Qin Yin has already ordered 3 days ago that all the Heavenly Tomes weapon embryos must be registered at the Heavenly Tomes Pavilion and issued a certificate to every weapon embryo. Moreover, all the city gates of Lanyan City have been set up with sensor crystals so that anyone who carries a weapon embryo's energy out of the city will be discovered. They seem to value the Heavenly Tomes more than we do." Qin Yi nodded. "Marshal Ji Yao. Your subject is here." Ji Yao cupped his fists and said solemnly. "The people you sent to Lanyan City, did the 4 great clans respond. Since we can't bring the embryo out of Lanyan City, we can only bring a living person out of the city to serve the Iha nation. Yes. The muscles on Ji Yao's face twitched slightly as he said, Prince Zhong's residence, Qin Yong's family is extremely loyal to the empire and flatly rejected the Iha nation's invitation. The Ji residence is under the influence of the Seven Seas King, Tang Lan, and Ji Lin is also respected as the Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager, enjoying all the favor, so he definitely isn't willing to come to the Iha nation. As for the Lu residence, our people had just entered the residence when they were chased out by their second young master, Lu Feng. It's really annoying. The only one who can be persuaded is the Ouyang residence. The Ouyang family is greedy for fame and fortune, but in the Heavenly Book Pavilion, they are below the other 3 great families, so they have always harbored resentment. Qin Yi squinted his eagle-like eyes and said indifferently, then let's give them a high position and a generous salary to test the Ouyang family. What kind of bait can the commander-in-chief give this subject? As long as Ouyang Bao is willing to move his entire family to Iha country, I will grant him the status of a duke and grant him a title of 10,000 households, which will be passed down from generation to generation. In addition, I will give him 50 million Jingrin coins to settle down. Heavens! Ji Yao gaped in shock, then said, 50 million, isn't that too much? Too much. Qin Yi said indifferently, there is only one Heavenly Tome noble clan in Iha country, and they have too few people. If the Ouyang family can come to Lingnan, I will ask the experts of the divine domain of the 7 world palaces to protect them in the forest of the Heavenly Tome monoliths to search for the lost ancient divine characters. With the Ouyang family's Heavenly Tome talent, they will definitely be able to write a Heavenly Tome, or even a divine tome. At that time, why would we need to worry about the Empire not submitting to us? Is the Commander-in-Chief talking about the Heavenly Tome monoliths? Long Qianlin stared blankly, then said, the forest of the Heavenly Tome monoliths is located in the White Leaves Forest deep within the mountains. It is said that the White Leaves Forest is filled with ferocious beasts, and it is guarded by dozens of vicious beasts that have lived for tens of thousands of years. Other than that, it is said that there are also some hermits hidden within the forest, cultivating there. Whether they are vicious beasts or hermits, I'm afraid that they will be very difficult to deal with. Moreover, the Heavenly Tome monolith's forest is only a legend from tens of thousands of years ago. Qin Yi said, I know all this, but the reopening of the Heavenly Imperial Gate and the reappearance of the Heavenly Tome monolith forest are also matters that must be carried out. Use all the strength we can to find the Heavenly Tome monolith forest. I will leave this matter to you, Marshal Ji Yao. Ji Yao's entire body trembled, then he cupped his hands and said, I will definitely not disappoint the Commander-in-Chief's expectations. I will find the Heavenly Tome monolith forest, copy down all of the monolith inscriptions, and bring them back to Iha country. Good, immediately gather people to do it. In addition, do not make this matter known, and even more so, do not let the people of the Empire know. Yes. Ji Yao cupped his hands and respectfully retreated. Qin Yi turned his gaze to Long Qianlin and said, General Long, what are the recent movements of the demons? Long Qianlin said, the Qianfeng and Leichong armies have already returned to the north of the mountains. The Qianfeng army is lying dormant in Winterfrost City, while the Leichong army is guarding the eastern border of Cangnan province, far away from the armies of the Empire's steel wall. There shouldn't be a great battle in a short period of time. The spies we sent out have found some news. The Qianfeng army is currently speeding up the replenishment of the armor demons. Every day, we can see a batch of armor demons coming out of the Heaven's Path Gorge. However, our people do not dare to enter the Heaven's Path Gorge. Any human who enters the Heaven's Path Gorge dies. So it's like that. I wonder what the demons are up to. Qin Yi gently pressed his palm on the table and said, we should make plans as early as possible. By the way, how is your research on the arrow box going? We have dismantled the arrow box used by the Empire. After careful study, the weapons department has developed a new arrow box. Moreover, the improved arrow box has a greater range and greater lethality. At present, the weapons department is working hard to forge it. I believe that before the next war, we will have at least 1,000 arrow boxes. Please rest assured, General. Yes. Also, we should intensify the training of the Iron Chain Horse. But our Iron Chain Horse has no advantage over the Armor Demon Corps at all. General. Long Qianlin said suspiciously, why do we continue to practice this kind of combat method? Qin Yi's eyes lit up. General Long, we should make plans as early as possible. What do you think about using the Iron Chain Horse to fight against the heavy cavalry of the Empire after the demons are wiped out? Long Qianlin could not help but feel a little disappointed. Do you still want to destroy the Empire, General? Of course. Qin Yi leaned back on the throne behind him and let out a long sigh. I can't sleep well if Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing are not dead. General Long, you must not have felt the pain of being unable to sleep at night. Long Qianlin, half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Lanyan City, the snow had just cleared up. It was another Xianxia festival. After celebrating with the people, for heaters were lit in the rear hall of Zai Tian Palace. A wave of warmth enshrouded the place. Female officials and maids stood quietly behind Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi, waiting on them without looking sideways. Swish! A blue light shot up from the dagger in Qin Yin's hand. According to the intensity of the light, it was relatively dim. It should be a low-rank book. However, Qin Yin was so excited that she was about to jump up. She said joyfully, I've become a book. Shao Shi, I've become a book. Yes. Tang Xiaoxi's face was also flushed with excitement. She said with a smile, Shao Yin has become a book. I should be one soon too. I should be. As she spoke, Tang Xiaoxi waved her spiritual pen and quickly wrote a paragraph of divine text on a shield. She had memorized the symbols of this divine text. It was not easy for Tang Xiaoxi, who had never liked to study since she was young. After she finished writing the divine text, Tang Xiaoxi suddenly froze. Flames emerged from her eye. Although the flames were relatively weak, she still entered the state of mind. Swish! Another beam of light green light soared into the sky. This was the second time that the Zai Tian Palace had activated the power of the heavens and the earth today. Tang Xiaoxi had also become a book. Although it was still a low-ranked book, and it was the worst book among all the heavenly books, it was enough to make the Countess extremely happy. Mu, Shao Yin and I have become books. Tang Xiaoxi excitedly rushed to a giant golden pillar at the back of the palace but did not say anything. This was because she and Qin Yin had discovered that Lin Muyu was very focused. The spiritual pen in his hand was swishing and writing golden divine text on a broadsword. This stingy fellow was finally willing to use low-rank black gold powder to write a book of heaven. It was not easy at all. Lin Muyu was completely focused. His eyebrows were tightly knitted as he wrote the divine text. He had already entered a state of complete concentration. In his eye, the light of the holy pen, Amaterasu, shone in all directions. Every stroke of the pen was so focused and powerful. One by one, the divine text quickly seeped into the broadsword. Very quickly, just as the book was about to be completed, his body suddenly shook. His spiritual sense entered a chaotic space. Hurricanes danced wildly around him, almost tearing his armor and body apart. The biting cold wind made it difficult for him to open his eyes. An absolute storm was gradually forming. Swish! A pale yellow light shot up into the sky. Once again, he had become a book. Wow, Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi's little mouths were wide open. It's become a book again. A low-rank earthly tome. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and woke up from his state of mind. Looking at the pale yellow light on the blade, he said, "Yes, it's become a book again. And it's still a low-rank earthly tome. What's wrong with me?" This was already the 5th low-rank earthly tome that Lin Muyu had written in the past half a month. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he refined the wisp of Fushi's divine power, and even the materials he used were constantly upgraded. He used an exquisite artifact embryo and black gold powder, but the result was still a low-rank earthly tome. There was not a single trace of a breakthrough. Qin Yin slowly sat down beside Lin Muyu. She smiled gently and said, "It's probably because of the combination of the divine characters. The divine characters that we use are all very simple, and they can't activate the more powerful power of heaven and earth. If we want to write a heavenly book of a higher grade, we have to learn more complicated and profound divine character combinations." "Yes, that's right," Lin Muyu slowly sheathed his long sword and asked, "But where can we learn more profound stories?" "I don't know either. Most of the heavenly tome and godly tome inscriptions on the continent have been lost." Chapter 509. At night, in the courtyard of the commander of the Longdan army camp, Lin Muyu held the star sword in her hand and looked up at the stars in the sky. She absorbed and refined the power of the stars. A strong king's fighting flame was also spinning rapidly on the surface of her body. As the star power that Lin Muyu refined became stronger and more vigorous, the strength of the king's fighting flame also underwent a huge change. The impact in her qi became more and more intense. Suddenly, the surging fighting qi seemed to have broken through a layer of suppression in her qi and quickly passed through all the meridians in her body. An incomparably comfortable feeling spread throughout her body. Another breakthrough. Lin Muyu was secretly delighted. With the progress of her cultivation of the heavenly book inscriptions, the cultivation of her state of mind was also getting higher and higher. Finally, she had broken through to the realm of the divine legacy. The strength of the king's fighting flame had greatly increased by a level. Before she could finish being happy, a deep chill suddenly fell from the sky and countless starlight poured into her body. Unlike the scorching heat of the 5 mountains descending from the heavens and the star lotus armor, this power of the stars was full of chill. In the blink of an eye, it turned into thousands of stars that continuously fell into Lin Muyu's EC. Bang, 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 Lin Muyu's spiritual awareness turned into an entity and flew in the EC. However, she could only watch as countless icy stars fell into the EC, stirring up monstrous waves. The waves suddenly froze when they surged in the air and turned into ice pillars. What a terrible chill! In just 2 minutes, Lin Muyu's EC had turned into a glacier. In an instant, Lin Muyu's consciousness seemed to be about to be frozen. Her whole body fell into a desperate situation that was close to death. What's going on? He was stunned and hurriedly used the king's fighting flame to melt the glacier. Suddenly, a vigorous flame rose from the depths of the EC and continued to fight against the chill of the stars in the sky. After a long time, just when Lin Muyu was about to collapse from exhaustion, the chill of the stars in the sky finally slowly melted and became a mysterious frost power under Lin Muyu's control. Ah, heaving a heavy sigh of relief, Lin Muyu separated herself from the E-high. Her entire body was covered in cold sweat, as if she had narrowly escaped death from purgatory. But in his exhaustion, he could feel a stream of ice force slowly flowing in his ocean of qi. That's right, it was star force of the ice attribute. He had finally mastered the 5th move of the star tactics. He slowly opened his 5 fingers, and suddenly, rays of cold stars rotated around his palm. The next moment, Lin Muyu suddenly closed his 5 fingers, and instantly, the power of ice surged in all directions. The 5th form of the star tactics was extremely destructive, icy jade frost. The surroundings had become an extremely cold domain, and thick frost had condensed on the ground. The old banyan tree that had sprouted because of the Book of Life had also instantly turned into an ice tree. With a crack, the ice tree turned into powder and broke into pieces. It was conceivable that if a human approached Lin Muyu, he would also die in the extremely cold domain of the Jade Snow Frost. Moreover, his death would be very tragic, turning into broken ice and dying. An endless wave of tiredness surged in his heart. He couldn't care so much anymore, so he went back to his room and fell asleep. Only rest and sleep could replenish the lost soul power and the king's fighting flame. The next day, Zai Tian Hull. Qin Yin finally passed the decision to auction the heavenly books. The three major chambers of commerce in the capital that had obtained the permission could sell the heavenly books in the auction house. The three major chambers of commerce were Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce, Dragon Seeking Chamber of Commerce, and Wancheng Chamber of Commerce. This also meant that the empire no longer monopolized the resources of the heavenly books. However, if one wanted to bring the heavenly books out of the city, he would need the permission from the Heavenly Book Pavilion and the Imperial Army. There were many people in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. It was not difficult to obtain the permission from the Heavenly Book Pavilion, but it was difficult to obtain the permission from the commander of the Imperial Army, Feng Jixing. Therefore, even though the Three Shang League had started to auction the heavenly books, the result was still the same. The heavenly book embryos could only be circulated in Lanyan City, and would eventually be used by the empire. In the afternoon, Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce released the news that they would be selling 3 lower-grade earthly books, 7 spiritual books, and 11 personal books 3 days later. Of course, these heavenly books came from Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, and Qin Yin. They did not join the Heavenly Book Pavilion, so the heavenly books that they carved only belonged to them and could be sold at will. However, in this way, the other major chambers of commerce could not sit still anymore. Late at night, in the residence of the King of Clouds, a group of guards stood outside the main hall with steel sabers in their hands. The candles in the hall were swaying, and a big pot was boiling meat soup. Beside it was a basket of wild vegetables. Su Muyun and Su Yu sat opposite each other. There were 2 other people beside them. One of them was the boss of the Wancheng Chamber of Commerce, Lu Xian, and the other was his daughter, Lu Ro. She was an 18-year-old girl wearing a long purple dress and was extremely beautiful. Cough, cough, Lu Xian's expression was a little ugly. She said, "It's rare that your highness still has the leisure to eat hot pot here. Jin Xiaotang has almost robbed our Wancheng Chamber of Commerce's source of income in Lanyan City. In the past few months, they have opened ironware shops, rice shops, silk shops, and so on. They have continuously attracted the weaker Shang League members to join them. The entire Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce has become so huge that it is comparable to the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. Now that they have announced that they will be selling the Heavenly Book artifact embryos in 3 days, I'm afraid that the economic lifeline of the entire empire will soon be controlled by Jin Xiaotang and Lin Muyu. Boss Lu, don't be anxious." Su Muyun smiled slightly. "Let's eat first. As for Jin Xiaotang and the Imperial Chamber of Commerce, let them do what they want. It doesn't matter." "How can you say that it doesn't matter?" Lu Xian could not help but stand up. Her face was red as she said, "The Wancheng Chamber of Commerce's business is getting worse. This month's profit is only about 80% of last month's. If this continues, I'm afraid we're really finished." "That won't happen." Su Muyun comforted her. 3 days later, a batch of goods will be shipped from Yunzhong province. Among them, there are at least 8 lower-grade earth tomes, nearly 30 spiritual tomes, and nearly 100 personal tomes. Isn't this enough for the Wancheng Chamber of Commerce to make a comeback? Lu Xian was instantly stunned. How is it possible? How can there be so many heavenly tomes outside of Lanyan City? Lu Ro was also surprised. "Yes," Su Yu smiled and said, "it's very simple. A month ago, Father began to search for talents who could inscribe heavenly tomes in Yunzhong province. He also sent people to set up the Scholars Pavilion in Muyu City to recruit talents from all over the world. Now, there are more than 300 scholars in the Scholars Pavilion. It's not surprising that there are so many heavenly tomes. Su Muyun gently stroked his white beard and said, Boss Lu, do you have any objections now? No. Lu Xian nodded repeatedly. Your Highness is really far-sighted. I admire you very much. Eat. Only when you're full will you have the energy to work. Yes. By the way, when will the new warhorses that the Iron Blade Army needs be delivered? The northern desert is too far from Lanyan City. It will take about a month to get there. 5,000 good horses are the best warhorses in the northern desert. Your Highness will not be disappointed. Okay, I'll remember your contribution. Thank you, Your Highness. 3 days later, the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce was as crowded as expected. The business was so good that it was scary. As this was the first time that the inscriptions of heavenly tomes were sold in the capital, almost all the big families had sent people there. The purpose of the inscriptions of heavenly tomes was to intimidate people. If some of the brave and ruthless playboys had the heavenly tomes in their hands, others would be afraid of them. The auction house also took advantage of the bad habits of these people, so their business was booming. In the end, the 3 heavenly tomes were sold for 800,000, 2,700,000 and 1,800,000 respectively. The spiritual books were mostly sold for around 200,000. The human books were cheaper and could be bought for around 50,000. However, this still made Lin Muyu a great profit. The first auction of the Heavenly Book embryo also made the people in the Heavenly Book Pavilion envious. A earthly scholar only received a monthly salary of 3,000 Jianyin coins, but a local book could actually be sold for around 2 million Jianyin coins. It should be known that even if a earthly scholar's output was low, they could still write a local book within half a year. The price of a local book was enough for them to live a luxurious life. However, those people still flocked to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. After all, only those who entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion could be conferred nobility. Otherwise, they would only be merchants and would never have the chance to bring honor to their ancestors. In the afternoon of the next day, a group of people entered Lanyan City. It was Su Jiantao from Five Valleys City who led 1,000 cavalry back to the imperial capital. Ever since he became the governor of Changnan Province, Su Jiantao spent most of his time in Five Valleys City. After entering the city, Su Jiantao didn't go to Zai Tian Hall first. Instead, he went to the Longdan army camp to see Lin Muyu. After all, Lin Muyu, the Marquis of Yunling, was the master of Changnan Province. Inside the hall, Su Jiantao came in with 3 kiliarchs. He cupped his fists and said, Commander, Su Jiantao is here. General, you may dispense with the formalities. What gift did you bring to the Longdan army camp this time? I don't have a gift, but I do have a bill. Oh? What bill? Su Jiantao smiled and handed over a piece of parchment. He said, the mineral resources in Changnan Province are very rich. Under our vigorous exploration, we have recently discovered 3 black gold mines, 7 black silver mines, 4 black copper mines, and more than a dozen black iron mines. Her Highness the Empress has already granted us permission to mine in the name of Five Valleys City. This is this month's list. We have refined a total of 300 caddies of black gold powder, nearly 1,000 caddies of black silver powder, black copper powder, and black iron powder. Lin Muyu was overjoyed. I have a secret agreement with Shao Yin. 30% of these mines will be handed over to the Ministry of Revenue, and the rest will be kept for ourselves. You can secretly send them to Jin Shaotang for sale to enrich our funds. Yes, I understand. As he spoke, Su Jiantao suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, By the way, Your Excellency, the Longdan Army Camp's patrolling cavalry stationed in Five Valleys City has recently caught a vagabond. A vagabond? Lin Muyu was stunned. How vagabond? He's not very vagabond, but he brought us a very important piece of news. What news? The Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths really exists. It is in the mountains west of the Swift White Province's Sunset City, in a forest called the Forest of White Leaves. That vagabond once wandered into the Forest of White Leaves and saw those monoliths. Afterwards, he was almost eaten by a powerful spiritual beast. After pretending to be dead, the spiritual beast did not eat the corpse and escaped. It is said that the Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths records a few ancient divine characters, and is the holy land that scholars dream of. However, the Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths is filled with wild beasts and danger lurks everywhere. Thus, scholars without the strength to truss a chicken are unable to enter. As he spoke, Su Jiantao took a deep breath. It is said that the people of Iha country are also secretly preparing to enter the Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths. I understand, Lin Muyu muttered to herself. She secretly calculated that it was time to go to Iha country. Chapter 5:10. What, go to the Iha nation? Qin Yin sat up in shock, her starry eyes filled with unwillingness. No, the Empire and the Iha nation are constantly at war. It's too dangerous to go to the Iha nation. I don't agree. Why? Lin Muyu clenched her fist, the imposing manner of a holy king expert. With my current cultivation, not many people can stop me in the Iha nation. Besides, Luolan has been in the 7 world palaces for a long time and doesn't care about worldly affairs. As long as Luolan doesn't personally act, no one can make things difficult for me. Besides, if the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest really does exist, then we must find it before the Iha nation, or else they'll have the upper hand. On the side, Feng Jixing said, if it's really as Su Jiantao said, the Empire really does need someone to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest first. I hope that Your Highness can consider the bigger picture. In the entire Empire, there is no one more suitable than you to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. Even General Feng agrees to you going to the Iha nation? Qin Yin angrily glared at Feng Jixing. Yes, Your Highness. Feng Jixing said, after the Heavenly Tomes take effect again, they will influence the future of the war. The Empire cannot fall behind. I hope that Your Highness will be careful. Fine. The corner of Qin Yin's mouth rose, revealing a crafty smile. Then I'll disguise myself and go with you to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. What? Feng Jixing was immediately frightened. Your Highness, this matter needs to be considered at length. Don't be impulsive. As the ruler of a country, how can you just leave like that? What if something unexpected happens? Didn't you support finding the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest? Qin Yin stood up, puffed out her round chest, and said confidently, with my cultivation, going with Brother Yu to the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest will definitely not be a problem. And just as General Feng said, I am the ruler of a country, so I must bear the Empire's future. Since the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest is so important, I must personally go. Feng Jixing said nothing. Then what about Zai Tian Hall? Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's little hand and said with a smile, let Xiaoxi take over my government for half a month. Tang Xiaoxi whimpered, I want to go too, okay. Feng Jixing felt a headache, you guys. Can you guys have a sense of responsibility? Saying that you're going out for training, I want to go too, then let's go together, Big Brother Feng. Lin Muyu smiled. Feng Jixing was exasperated. Sigh. Before the late emperor left, he asked me, Feng Jixing, to take good care of Your Highness and the great Qin Empire. Now that the empire has been split into two, Feng Jixing has already let down the late emperor, and now I have to watch Your Highness take risks. As he spoke, Feng Jixing patted Lin Muyu's shoulder and said, in any case, I'll leave His Highness's safety to you all along the way. As for Princess Shi, just follow His Highness's orders and stay in Zai Tian Palace to manage the affairs and control the situation. This. Tang Xiaoxi blinked her eyes, but she didn't know what to say to refuse. Qin Yin held her hand and said with a smile, "If I and brother you really find the heavenly tome monolith forest, we will definitely copy down the inscriptions and bring them back. Xiao Shi, don't worry." "All right then. Don't go back on your word. I want all of the heavenly tomes of fire." "All right." With the decision made, Qin Yin handed the imperial jade seal to Tang Xiaoxi for safekeeping. This jade seal was inlaid with gold and was extremely precious. Tang Xiaoxi carefully held it in her hands. Afterwards, seeing that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu had already disguised themselves as merchants, she could only accept it. She said in an aggrieved manner, "Xiao Yin, since I can't go to the Yihan nation this time, you must help me play with all of the mountains and rivers that I can play with." Qin Yin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "We're not going to play with the mountains and rivers, we're going to find the heavenly tome monolith forest." I know." Lin Muyu looked at Tang Xiaoxi and felt a little heartache. She said, "Once we destroy the Yihan nation and unify the world, Xiao Shi, you can go play wherever you want." "All right, Xiao Yin, and I will set off immediately. Xiao Shi, don't forget to cultivate. I hope that by the time I return, your martial spirit will have already evolved into a four-tailed fire fox. I will work hard. You guys be careful on the road." "Got it." On clear Sky Street, Qin Yin was dressed in soft fur armor and a white fox cape. Her hair was coiled up and casually threaded with a jade hairpin. She looked elegant and pretty. This was the attire of a rich young lady from Lanyan City. Basically all the women of merchants would dress like this, but none of them were as elegant and graceful as Qin Yin. On the other hand, Lin Muyu was dressed in the attire of a house guard. She wore chainmail and a coarsely made animal skin robe with a clan crest pinned to her chest. She rode the treading snow warhorse, acting as Qin Yin's personal bodyguard. The two of them were mixed in with a caravan. This caravan belonged to the Purple Yin Flower Chamber of Commerce. They were going to Lingnan's Yihan Nation Sunset City to purchase fresh leather goods. Although the Empire and the Yihan Nation were at war, trade was still allowed. It was just that the inspections were relatively stricter. Clearly, this caravan didn't know who Lin Muyu and Qin Yin were. They only knew that Jin Xiaotang had stuffed them in and was responsible for bringing them to Sunset City. When the caravan left Lanyan City, snowflakes floated in the sky. It was snowing again. The cold wind blew. Lin Muyu pulled at her collar and felt the chill. The other guards were already shivering in the cold. As a holy king, Lin Muyu's resistance to the cold was not something an ordinary person could compare to. She could feel the chill, but she didn't fear it. However, when she turned to look at Qin Yin, she saw that she was tightly holding onto the reins of the warhorse. Her face was red from the cold, and snowflakes fell on her long eyelashes. "Xiao Yin, why don't you go into the carriage?" Lin Muyu asked with concern. Qin Yin shook her head and let out a breath of hot air. She smiled and said, "I'm fine. Besides, the women of the caravan are in the carriage. I'm not used to interacting with strangers. Brother, you, don't force me into the carriage." "All right then." Lin Muyu said, "You cultivate the law of light, and you're a woman. Your resistance to the cold is far inferior to mine. Why don't you come into my arms?" "Can I?" Qin Yin blushed. She suddenly felt like her heart was beating fast. "Why not? These people won't say anything." "Okay." Qin Yin nodded and leaped up. Starlight flashed between her feet, and in the next moment, she was already sitting in Lin Muyu's arms. The two of them rode on the same treading on snow warhorse. The guards behind them were dumbfounded. Ever since they had started their journey, this beautiful girl had been silent. No one had expected her to be so skilled. She was not a delicate woman at all. And when Qin Yin was in her arms, Lin Muyu slowly circulated her king's battle flame. A faint flame power enshrouded her arms. Qin Yin could naturally feel the warmth. She couldn't help but smile and say, "Brother, you don't need to use your battle chi to warm me up. This is a kind of cultivation for cultivators. Xiao Yin can withstand the cold." Okay. Lin Muyu slowly dispersed her king's battle flame. Feeling the warmth of Qin Yin in her arms, the two of them were truly warming each other up. It snowed for a full 5 days. Just when the sky cleared up, the convoy with empty carriages finally arrived at Xiang City with difficulty. They had now entered the Yihe nation's territory, but there were no restrictions. War was a matter between armies. Ever since the massacre at Lanyan City, the armies of the Empire and the Yihe nation rarely attacked civilians. Lin Muyu was dressed as a guard and wasn't afraid of being recognized. Although there were portraits of him and Qin Yin almost everywhere in the Yihe nation, they didn't look alike. Therefore, very few people knew what the Empress and Marquis Yunling looked like. In the end, the boss of the convoy spent a few Jinin coins and the convoy successfully entered Xiang City. Arriving at Xiang City again, Lin Muyu was naturally very emotional. The last time he left here, he left with a body full of fatal injuries. He would always remember Ding Shi's arrow that almost took his life, but he would always remember Ding Shi's trust and protection of him. If it wasn't for Ding Shi, perhaps he and Qin Yin wouldn't be alive now. Following the main road in the city, they left Xiang City in a straight line. Their next destination was the eastern forest of the Swift White Province. It would take at least 3 to 5 days of travel to reach the vicinity of the White Leaves Forest. Outside the city, there was an endless stream of people. There were merchants, mercenaries, and farmers. Lin Muyu urged his horse forward slowly and whispered to Qin Yin, "The group of people on the left has a heavenly book on them. It looks like a high-grade spiritual book. They should be heading for the same destination as us, the White Leaves Forest." Oh. Qin Yin glanced at them and saw that the group of people on the left was dressed very strangely. In the middle was a young man dressed like a scholar and was about 25 years old. Surrounding him was a group of burly mercenaries and guards. It seemed like they were responsible for protecting him. Second young master. A mercenary with the insignia of a chili arch on his shoulder said respectfully, "This time, you secretly went out to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest without even telling the master. Isn't that a little inappropriate?" The second young master had an unruly expression and sneered, "General Liu, you will bring 50 people to protect me. I will pay you a sufficient commission. Don't worry, even if you don't find anything on this trip, you will still receive a commission of 3,000 Jinin coins. If you help me find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, I will give you an additional 100,000 Jinin coins. So, you only need to take care of your own business. Yes, your subordinate understands." Lin Muyu heard everything clearly and quickly deduced the identity of these people. Since this second young master knew of the existence of the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, he must also be a Heavenly Tome scholar. Moreover, to be called the second young master and to be so generous, he must be the second young master of the Yihe Kingdom's largest Heavenly Tome family, the Northern Qi Manor, Huan of Northern Qi. As expected, the struggle for the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest was not simple. The people of the Yihe Kingdom had also received the news. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin looked at each other and tacitly urged their horses forward. The two warhorses galloped away. The fewer people who knew about them, the better. Chapter 5:11. In the evening, they stayed in a small town on the eastern border of the Swift White Province. In order to conceal their identities, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin each bought a hunter's attire and disguised themselves as hunter siblings. When Qin Yin's fur armor was changed into a leather skirt armor, and her hair was replaced with a hairpin made of animal bone, she looked more like a girl next door. Lin Muyu stared at her for a long time. Have you seen enough? Qi Nin giggled and asked, what's different about me now? You're very different. Lin Muyu smiled and said, Xiao Yin, let's hurry. There's an inn about 10 miles from here. Let's spend the night there. Yes. The two of them mounted their horses and left the small town. Both of them carried longbows and quivers on their backs. No matter how you looked at it, they looked like a pair of hunter siblings. Not long after sunset, there was indeed an inn on the side of the road. Many travelers stopped here. Some were there to eat and drink, while others stayed the night. After handing the horses to the waiter, they booked 2 rooms. The lobby of the inn was bustling with activity. A young bard girl was playing the zither and singing an old nursery rhyme. A group of mercenaries and rich young masters listened to her, mesmerized. Lin Muyu looked around and was shocked to see that group of people again. Huan of Northern Qi and his group of guards were all there. They were squeezed together and took up half the lobby. Sir, this way please. There's an empty table over there, the waiter said politely. Thank you. Qi Nin ordered 2 simple dinners and ate with Lin Muyu. Not long after, a young man dressed like a rich man suddenly stood up in a corner of the lobby. His face was red, and it was clear that he was drunk. He walked forward unsteadily and held onto the balcony in the middle of the lobby. He smiled at the young girl and said, Girl, I see that you sing well. Why don't you come to my room and sing for me again? I'll give you a Jinin coin. What do you think? The young girl paused and said, Sir, I can't. What did you say? The noble young master's face turned red, and he held a Jinin coin in his hand as he said, I'm giving you face by doing this. Don't be so shameless. With your lowly status, it's a blessing for your ancestors to give you the opportunity to serve me. Let me tell you, with your status and appearance, a Jinin coin is enough to sleep with you, not to mention that it's just a song from you. The young girl was so scared that her face was pale. Sir, I'm just a performer, please have some self-respect. The old man also begged, Sir, let my daughter go. She's still young, get out of my way. The young master suddenly held the long sword in his hand horizontally and hit the old man with the scabbard with a bang. The long sword was enshrouded in a light green light, and the power of heaven and earth slowly circulated around it. It was actually a people's book, and it looked like a low-level people's book. He was angry and embarrassed, and said, Who in the eastern region of the province doesn't know my name? I wrote a middle-level people's book at the age of 22, and even the Marquis of Xiang sent me a letter of appointment. You little girl, how dare you not give me face? You're looking for death. Behind him, one of Li's guards started to jeer, Ha ha ha, young master, do you want us to help you send this arrogant little girl to her room? Stop. Before Lin Muyu could speak, someone stood up not far away. It was Northern Qi's second son, Northern Qi Huan. His face was full of anger, and he slammed the table and stood up. He said, I didn't think there would be such a despicable person in the countryside, taking liberties with a girl in broad daylight. Li Zuo, you're shameless. Who are you? Li Zuo was startled, and looked at Northern Qi Huan and the others. His face was full of shame and anger. Who do you think you are? How dare you lecture me? Northern Qi Huan sneered, and slowly walked forward with a thin sword in his hand. He said, What did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly. That old guy, the Marquis of Xiang, personally sent you a letter of appointment? Yes, what about it? Ha ha ha, that old guy is really muddle-headed. How could he send a letter of appointment to an idiot like you? Is there really no one else in Iha country that a despicable person like you can succeed? Bullsh *T. Li Zuo was furious, and the sword in his hand glowed. He said, I don't care who you are today. If you dare to interfere in my business, I'll let you have a taste of the Book of Heaven. Is that so? Northern Qi Huan's face was calm. He said, "Then bring it on." "Bastard." Li Zuo's face had already begun to twist slightly. He gently flipped his wrist, and with a thought, the Book of Heaven was immediately activated. What a good low-level wind book. Wind blades spun around the blade, and suddenly flew towards Northern Qi Huan. After all, it was a low-level human book, the lowest level of Book of Heaven. Its power was far less terrifying than a spirit book or an earth book. It was equivalent to an attack from an earth realm cultivator. Northern Qi Huan raised his sword, and a thick orange light shot up from the blade. It was a top-level ice book of heaven. Hum, 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 waves of wind and snow gathered in front of Northern Qi Huan, condensing into the shape of an ice shield, easily dispelling Li Zuo's low-level spiritual book. At the same time, Northern Qi Huan rushed forward, and his sword suddenly came down from the sky. With a bang, the ice and snow swept across. Li Zuo stood majestically in place, his face ashen. The next moment, white frost climbed up his body. Humph, so weak. Northern Qi Huan slowly sheathed his sword, and turned to leave. Behind him, with a crash, Li Zuo's body collapsed. Even his blood had been frozen into ice. His entire body had turned into a pile of broken ice. Looking at the situation, he should be completely dead. Murder, murder. The innkeeper was stunned. After Li Zuo's group of subordinates saw this, they were all dumbfounded. They did not even think of getting back at Northern Qi Huan. One by one, they rushed out of the door and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Northern Qi Huan returned to the table, sat down, and said with a smile, "Drink, let's continue eating and drinking. Don't let a despicable person spoil our mood." Yes. The group of mercenaries seemed to be used to this. This soul-stirring scene of Book of Heaven killing, they should be used to it, right? Not long after, the innkeeper called in a few burly men. After cleaning up the pieces of the body, they began to sing again. The lobby was once again bustling with noise and excitement. Lin Muyu ate the wheat cake and drank the egg drop soup. She couldn't help but frown, and said in a low voice, "Killing people in Iha Kingdom is so easy that no one cares?" Qin Yin raised the corner of her mouth and said softly, "The Iha Kingdom has its laws, but after the heavenly imperial gate was reopened, they established another law regarding the tomes of heaven. Those who hold the tomes of heaven are allowed to fight and kill each other with the tomes of heaven, and the killer is not against the law." Qin Yi used this method to encourage the tomes of heaven within the borders of the Iha Kingdom to continuously improve their abilities. Hearing this, Lin Muyu felt a chill in her heart. Qin Yi was able to kill his brother and seize the throne, so he indeed had the courage to issue such a cruel law. At this moment, Northern Qi Huan suddenly glanced at Lin Muyu in the distance. He seemed to have already recognized Lin Muyu, but he was not too sure. Following this, Northern Qi Huan's gaze fell on Qin Yin's beauty and was unwilling to move away. Who would have thought that there would be such a beautiful girl in the countryside? Northern Qi Huan couldn't help but sigh to himself. He raised the wine cup in his hand and drank it in one gulp. To the side, the leader of the mercenaries, Lu Zan, smiled faintly. Looking at her attire, she should be the daughter of a hunter's family. If you really want her, it is not impossible. In any case, it has been a tiring journey. With such a beautiful woman by your side, this trip is not in vain. If you want her, I can help you settle this matter. Is that so? Northern Qi Huan laughed and gently patted Lu Zan's shoulder. If General Lu can send her to my bed tonight, there will be an extra 1,000 Jinin coins in your purse tomorrow morning. Leave it to me. The two of them did not know that every word they said was heard clearly by Lin Muyu's spiritual pulse technique. At this time, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had already eaten their fill and immediately went upstairs to their rooms. What's wrong? After entering the room, Qin Yin looked at him in surprise. Xiao Yin, it's all your fault. Lin Muyu said. What's wrong with me? Qin Yin was confused. Lin Muyu said seriously, it's all your fault for being so beautiful. The second son of Northern Qi in the hall has taken a fancy to you, so he and the accompanying mercenaries are conspiring against you. What? Qin Yin was slightly angry. She gripped the hilt of the heavenly sword and said, I'll go downstairs and teach them a lesson right now. Don't be rash, we can't reveal our identities. Lin Muyu thought for a moment and said, there's a better way. Oh? What way? Just come with me. Go out the back window. Okay. Not long after, a young man wearing black clothes and a black cloth over his face appeared in front of the inn. He suddenly kicked open the door and looked at the Northern Qi people with a cold gaze. He shouted, Who killed my son, Lizhua? Get out here. I'll be waiting for you in the woods over there. Come if you have the guts. After speaking, he turned and left, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded people in the hall. Northern Qi Huan's expression was severe. Damn, the tiny Li family dares to challenge the Northern Qi government? Are they tired of living? General Lu, take your men and come with me. I want the Li family to know that Northern Qi Huan has more than one heavenly book. Yes, second son. The group of mercenaries picked up their weapons and walked out in a single file. The inn owner secretly wiped his forehead. Fortunately, this group of people was fighting outside. If it was inside the inn, his pitiful little shop would have been torn apart. Chapter 5:12. When Huan of Northern Qi and Lu Zan brought dozens of people into the forest, they saw the black-clothed man standing there with an unsheathed sword. The night was dark, and his expression could not be seen, but they could faintly feel the strong aura emanating from him. Who exactly are you? Huan of Northern Qi laughed coldly, and with a swipe of his finger, he pulled out the dagger at his waist. The dagger glowed with a faint earthy sheen. It was another low-grade artifact. Lu Zan narrowed his eyes, and with his hand on the hilt of his sword, he said, Kid, no matter who you are, provoking the Northern Qi government today is a mistake you should never have made. Heh. The black-clothed man lightly gripped the hilt of his sword, his face full of righteous indignation. He said, You killed my young master, Lizhua. This debt of blood must be paid in blood. Do you know how good young Master Lizhua was to us guards? He was a very loyal person. That year, when we were hunting in the mountains, we were caught by bandits. The bandits forced us to drink urine. Do you know? In order to protect us, young Master Lizhua drank all the urine, an entire bucket. After he finished, guess what? He wiped his mouth and asked the bandits if he could have a refill. Another time, we went up the mountain again and got caught by bandits. Those bandits had a special hobby. In order to save us, young master endured the humiliation alone. His chrysanthemum went in and sunflower came out. God knows how painful it was. Such a loyal young master was killed by you. I don't care who you are, but you must die in this forest today. Huan of Northern Qi looked angry and embarrassed. So you are Lizhua's guard, heh, a mere guard dares to challenge me? Come, for your courage, I will use this local book to send you to the next world. Ah, third sound. Lu Zan put a hand on Huan of Northern Qi's dagger and said, There is no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Leave this kid to me, it just so happens that, my quick sword hasn't tasted blood in a long time. Oh? Huan of Northern Qi laughed. Since General Lu is in the mood, I will leave this kid to you. All right. Lu Zan laughed heartily as he slowly pulled out his sword. It was a long sword that glowed with a green light. It should be a profound rank 7 weapon. It was rare for a mercenary leader like Lu Zan to have such a long sword. After he pulled out his sword, his face was filled with a sinister smile as he said, A mere guard dares to challenge me? Brat, you've got guts. Tell me your name, this daddy's sword will never kill a nameless ghost. The person in black was naturally Lin Muyu. She couldn't help but smile. There's no need. You're already a dead man anyway. Impudent. Lu Zan didn't ask for a name. His battle boots stepped on the soft snow as he charged forward. A wave of raging Jinqi flew around him, and a fire wolf martial spirit appeared in front of his chest. This person's cultivation wasn't too low. He was actually in the second tier of the Earth realm. Unfortunately, in front of Lin Muyu, this kind of cultivation was too insignificant. The star's sword didn't even leave its sheath. Just as Lu Zan's sharp sword was less than 6 feet away from Lin Muyu's chest, he suddenly raised his head. His handsome face was filled with murderous intent. The Holy King Realm domain suddenly condensed into a small-scale storm that enveloped Lu Zan. Whoosh! Lu Zan's mind was a complete blank. In that instant, he almost couldn't control his mind. A powerful pressure came from all around him, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Yes, at this moment, he felt as if he had fallen into purgatory and was surrounded by a group of ghosts. That kind of hair-raising, hopeless feeling was not something a normal person could endure. Arg! Lu Zan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His pupils rapidly enlarged. His entire body was ice-cold as he fell into the snow. His body trembled slightly. He had actually died under the pressure of the domain. Lin Muyu's gaze froze. She hadn't thought that Lu Zan, the leader of a mercenary group, would be so weak that he could actually be scared to death by the illusion brought by the domain's pressure. She really didn't know how this kind of cowardly rat had become a mercenary, or even a leader of a mercenary group. General Lu? Huan of Northern Qi was startled. He hurriedly signaled with his eyes, "Quick, go take a look." A mercenary walked forward and felt Lu Zan's breath. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. His face pale, he said, "Leader, he's already dead." My God, what happened? Huan of Northern Qi was dumbfounded. He hurriedly raised his dagger and angrily shouted in a low voice, "Who are you? What despicable method did you use to kill Lu Zan?" Lin Muyu didn't speak. She only looked at him indifferently. Instead, a mercenary to the side whispered in his ear, "Second Master, the leader bled from every orifice and died. I suspect he was poisoned. This kid might be an expert in poisons." Huan of Northern Qi's slightly handsome face instantly twisted. He said, "Poisoned? Bastard, you dared to kill my people. I'll let you have a taste of the heavenly book." As he spoke, Huan of Northern Qi gently flicked his wrist. The inscriptions on the dagger suddenly appeared. A yellow light shot into the sky, and with a whoosh, it lit up the horizon. But just as his low-grade earthly book was activated, a shadow swept past. The entire process of Lin Muyu's stellar sword being unsheathed and sheathed did not take more than half a second. In the blink of an eye, it had already returned to its original position. Huan of Northern Qi was stunned. The next moment, he felt a chill on his right wrist. In the next second, he felt a sharp pain. His entire wrist had been directly cut off by Lin Muyu's sword. The dagger with the low-grade earthly book had disappeared without a trace. Huan of Northern Qi suddenly knelt on the ground. This young master of an aristocratic family had never been so seriously injured. The pain caused his forehead to be covered in sweat, and he almost fainted. The group of mercenaries and guards stared with their mouths agape. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the mercenaries had run away, and there were not many guards left. No one had clearly seen Lin Muyu's movements, but they knew that it was the guard of Li Zhua's family who had acted. Otherwise, Huan of Northern Qi's hand would not have been cut off. "Don't run." Huan of Northern Qi knelt on the ground, his face full of pain. In a loud voice, he said, "All mercenaries, stop. Kill him." The person who cuts off his head will be rewarded with 1 million Jianghu coins. The group of mercenaries were all bloodthirsty outlaws. Once they heard 1 million, they all stopped in their tracks. Lin Muyu played with Huan of Northern Qi's low-grade earthly book embryo dagger. She smiled and said, if this earthly book is activated, killing someone, in the Iha kingdom, it shouldn't be a crime, right? If any of you want to try the power of this low-grade earthly book, then feel free to try. The pain of the wind blade cutting through your body shouldn't be too great, right? The mercenaries didn't care about 1 million. They turned and ran. In the blink of an eye, they were all gone, leaving only a few guards standing there with ashen faces. One of the middle-aged guards seemed to be in the first tier of the Earth realm. He could be considered the only decent warrior in the group. Only he had the courage to go forward and help Huan of Northern Qi up. He said, Second Master, we've run into a tough opponent today. We can only admit defeat. Let's go back to the inn first. We can't stay here. Your wound needs to be bandaged. Huan of Northern Qi struggled with all his might. No, Uncle Zhang, I still have a earthly book embryo. I want to kill this bastard who ruined my hand. There's still a weapon embryo? Lin Muyu's gaze swept over and found that there was an exquisite dimensional bag on Huan of Northern Qi's waist. It must be in this dimensional bag. Thus, Lin Muyu leaped forward and opened her hand to grab the dimensional bag. Don't go too far, the guard called Uncle Zhang suddenly swept his fist over. His fist was full of power. This person's martial arts cultivation was indeed not bad. Unfortunately, his opponent was Lin Muyu, a warrior in the Holy King realm. Her 5 fingers suddenly turned into a palm. Lin Muyu used her strength lightly and, relying only on the strength of her body, forcefully slapped Uncle Zhang's fist. With a bang, the Jianghu whirlpool surged. Uncle Zhang took a step back. Lin Muyu took advantage of the situation to grab the dimensional bag on Huan of Northern Qi's waist and forcefully took it. She smiled slightly and said, Thank you, Second Master of Northern Qi, for your reward. This is compensation for killing young Master Li Zhua. As she spoke, Lin Muyu turned around and with a few leaps, disappeared into the night. Don't go. Huan of Northern Qi's face was full of anger and embarrassment as he roared. Second Master. Uncle Zhang looked at Lin Muyu's back in the distance and said, Forget it, this person's cultivation is too high. I'm afraid there are no such masters in Bailing City, how is that possible? Huan of Northern Qi said in shock, Bailing City is full of talents. There are many masters in the President's Manor, and Marshal Ji Yao and Marshal Long Qianlin are also very skilled. Is this kid's cultivation above Ji Yao and Long Qianlin? Uncle Zhang shook his head. Commander Ji and Commander Long are only at the Heaven Realm. This person. I can faintly feel that he held back 90% of his strength. Just now, he scared Lu Zan to death. That wasn't because he was scared to death, but because he was pressured to death. This person is at least at the Sanctuary Realm. His voice sounds so young. How many young Sanctuary Realm experts are there in Iha Nation? Swift White Province is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Second Master, we've offended someone we shouldn't have. Let's go back and heal. Huan of Northern Qi's face was twisted. He said, Holy Realm Master, so what? The Northern Qi family is favored by the commander. I will definitely gather people to Swift White Province. If I don't uproot the Li family, I swear I'm not a man. Yes, let's go back and heal. Uncle Zhang's expression was dark and uncertain. His heart was in turmoil. In the short exchange just now, he could feel that his opponent was unfathomable. Furthermore, he felt that the opponent had not used his full strength. Otherwise, his group of people would probably already be corpses. The opponent hadn't even used a single martial art move. This meant that he wanted to hide his identity. Just who was this black-clothedly family guard? At the back of the inn, the back window of a room on the second floor opened wide. With a swoosh, two figures flew into the room. After closing the window, Lin Muyu was about to burst into laughter. She threw Huan of Northern Qi's dimensional bag onto the table and laughed. This group of idiots, I'm dying of laughter. With their level of cultivation, they're still fighting here. Any random person in the heaven realm would be able to kill them all. Qin Yin, who had been watching the battle, was also smiling and blushing. She said, Li Zhua's death is not to be regretted. But you, why didn't you kill Huan of Northern Qi just now? Leave this kind of idiot for Iha Kingdom. It's good for us. Besides, we are people who practice martial ethics. If there's no need to kill, we shouldn't kill. Yes, Shao Yin knows. I can do it too. Let's not talk about this. Let's see what good things are in Huan of Northern Qi's dimensional bag. Chapter 5:13. Lin Muyu opened the dimensional bag and shook it on the table. With a clatter, a battle axe fell out. Golden characters slowly flowed on the battle axe. It was another tool embryo that had become a book. Looking at its luster, it was still a low-grade earth book embryo. Although Huan of Northern Qi was only a playboy, he had many treasures on him. A low-grade earth book of the law of earth. Lin Muyu picked up the battle axe, waved it around, and threw it into her Qianquan bag. Smiling, she said, I'll kindly accept it. This thing might be useful in the White Leaves Forest. Let's see if there's anything else. Yes, yes. Qin Yin knelt on the bed to the side. Full of interest, she grabbed Huan of Northern Qi's dimensional bag and shook it again. Her expression was full of anticipation, like a beautiful kitten waiting for cuteness. Clatter, another item fell on the table. This time, it was a glowing jade pendant. The jade pendant glowed with a medium orange light. This mid-grade spiritual book was actually written on a jade pendant. It was not easy. However, the tool embryo's carrying capacity was not strong enough, so the power of this mid-grade spiritual book was destined to be very ordinary. This kind of thing was suitable for the playboys of nobility to wear. In a battlefield or a place of slaughter, it probably would not be of much use. A mid-grade spiritual book of the law of fire. Lin Muyu smiled slightly. Shao Yin, keep it. This is more suitable for you. Yes, okay. Qin Yin smiled and nodded. Lin Muyu held the dimensional bag and continued to shake it. With a few clatters, a few heavy wooden boxes fell on the table. One of them had already been opened. Inside was a shiny golden powder. It was black gold powder. Looking at the color and composition, it should be mid-grade black gold powder. Huan of Northern Qi was indeed a playboy. He had too many treasures on him. After arranging the wooden boxes in a row, Qin Yin smiled so widely that she could not close her mouth. At least 2.5 kilograms of mid-grade black gold powder. We're rich, we won't have to buy black gold powder for a long time. Yes, Shao Yin, keep it well. Let's see if there are any other treasures. Yes. Qin Yin shook her dimensional bag again, and a few bags of money fell out. There were piles of gold coins, dozens of diamond coins, and a pile of gold notes. Northern Qi's Huan was simply too rich. He carried nearly 100,000 gold and diamond coins with him. This was not something a typical rich second-generation heir could compare to. At that moment, an exquisitely crafted leather whip fell out of the interspatial bag with a clatter. Qin Yin was stunned. What's this? I don't know. With another, pada, sound, several candles fell out, as well as a ball-shaped object stuffed in the mouth. In an instant, Lin Muyu was dumbfounded and understood what the hell was going on. This. Qin Yin grabbed the mouthpiece and thought for a moment with her brows furrowed. Is this a warhorse accessory? Flustered, Lin Muyu replied, although it's meant for riding, it's not a warhorse accessory. Alright, these are useless. Xiao Yin, put them down. Qin Yin looked at the whip and the candles again. She seemed to have thought of something. Although her father, Qin Jin, had been diligent and thrifty all his life, and did not even have a concubine, there were many of these things in the mansions of other nobles in Lanyan City. Qin Yin had heard rumors about these things from the maids. In an instant, Qin Yin's little face flushed red. She lowered her head, too embarrassed to look any more. The candles fell to the ground with a pa-da sound. Ah, don't waste it. Lin Muyu picked up the candles and said, this can be used to light a fire during camping. Oh, Qin Yin blushed. She took the candles again, but they burned her hands. Blushing, she threw the candles into her space bag. Then, she sneaked a glance at Lin Muyu and happened to meet his gaze. Immediately, she did not dare to look at him. Although she was an empress, Qin Yin was still a young girl who had not come into contact with this field. At this moment, her extremely bashful look was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. Xiao Yin, what are you thinking about? Lin Muyu asked teasingly. I'm not. Qin Yin pouted and argued, I'm not thinking about those things. I didn't say anything, but you confessed yourself. Lin Muyu sat down at the side and took out a few magic crystal coins to play with. Woo-woo. Qin Yin looked at him with watery eyes. She did not speak, but her eyes clearly said, you're bullying me. It was simply pitiful. Lin Muyu did not dare to look at Qin Yin's beauty again. Otherwise, he might make a mistake. This was not good. After all, there did not seem to be Durex or Yuding in this era. If the news of the Empress being pregnant got out after her adventure in the Swift White Province, it would be a great harm to Qin Yin. Some things were better left for later. That night, Huan of Northern Qi's wrist was cut off, and Li Jue died. She did not know if the Li Manor would really come looking for trouble, so Lin Muyu did not dare to be careless. She did not return to her room, but sat at Qin Yin's bedside to practice the stellar technique and the heavenly book cultivation method. Meanwhile, Qin Yin practiced for a while with Lin Muyu's company, and then slowly fell asleep. At daybreak, there was a lot of noise outside. It was obvious that someone was quarreling, and there was the sound of horses' hooves coming from outside the post house. Something was probably going to happen again, but it was none of his business. The Iha nation's business would be settled by the Iha nation, and Lin Muyu did not intend to interfere. What he wanted to do was to fan the flames and make the fire of the Iha nation as big as possible. Qin Yin slowly woke up. His body was full of fighting energy. After last night's practice of the dragon-slaying formula and the heavenly book cultivation method, his fighting energy seemed to be even purer. He looked up and saw that Lin Muyu was taking a short rest with her eyes closed. He did not disturb her. He put on his shoes, got out of bed, and went to fetch water to wash his face. In the lobby of the post house, a group of people dressed in the Iha nation's patrol uniforms stood there, surrounding the post house so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. When they saw Qin Yin carrying a basin of water downstairs, they all took a second look, but no one suspected that this girl dressed like a hunter would kill the young master of the Li Manor, Li Jue. So, after washing up and eating breakfast, when Lin Muyu and Qin Yin went downstairs together, they saw from afar that Huan of Northern Qi, Uncle Zhang, and the others had also come downstairs. A patrol leader came forward, raised his arm, and said, "Sir, please stay. Was the murder case in the post house last night committed by you?" "Yes." Huan of Northern Qi did not deny it, and said, "Li Jue of the Li Manor molested a good girl, and after I stopped him, he became angry out of humiliation and wanted to fight with the heavenly book, so I killed him with the low-grade earthly book. According to the heavenly book law of the Iha nation, I am not guilty. Sir, do you need to know anything else? Sir, please show your identity. Humph! Huan of Northern Qi laughed coldly, and took out a token from his bosom, and said, I am the second young master of the Northern Qi Manor, Huan of Northern Qi. Is that enough? The patrol leader was stunned, and hurriedly took a few steps back, bowed, and said, I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive me, second young master. Since you are the second young master of the Northern Qi Manor, then this matter is over. Behind him, a middle-aged man dressed like a butler said, unforgiving, Sir, he killed young Master Li Jua, and dozens of people saw it. Are we just going to let him go, and let Xiaoyao go beyond the law? The officer said coldly, according to the heavenly book law of the Iha nation, killing someone with the heavenly book is not guilty. Butler Li, I advise you not to pursue this matter. Butler Li was stunned. At this time, Huan of Northern Qi walked forward, and with a stern look, he said in a low voice, You are the butler of the Li Manor? Humph, I know that the Li family is a famous family in the Qingye County area, but just you wait, I will remember the revenge of cutting off my hand. Go back and tell that black-clothed guard of the Li Manor that the next time the Northern Qi family comes, we will bring thousands of troops and raze the Li Manor to the ground. You, Butler Li stared at Huan of Northern Qi, but didn't know what to say. After Huan of Northern Qi and the others had left, Butler Li said quietly, A black-clothed guard of the Li Manor, who is that? When they arrived outside the post house, Lin Muyu took 2 warhorses from the waiter. After Lin Muyu mounted Takshu, she felt her entire body relax. Qin Yin, on the other hand, bought an animal skin cloak from the post house and covered her beautiful face. Although her beautiful face was something to be proud of, a beautiful face could also bring about unnecessary trouble. Hence, it was better to cover it up to avoid a lot of trouble. Not far away, a group of people from the Northern Qi Manor also mounted their horses. The direction they set off in was the same as Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Were they still going to the White Leaves Forest to search for the Heavenly Book Monolith Forest after losing so many mercenaries? Lin Muyu furrowed her brows. The strongest person in this group was Uncle Zhang of the Earth Realm. For a group like them to go to the White Leaves Forest was clearly seeking death. Even if other cultivators didn't kill them, just the spiritual beasts in the White Leaves Forest would be enough to kill them countless times over. At this time, Huan of Northern Qi also noticed that Lin Muyu was looking at him. He glanced back and his temper seemed to be much more restrained. He didn't have any friction with Lin Muyu. At least, there wasn't a fierce scene of, What are you looking at? I'm looking at you, or, You want to die. Afterward, Huan of Northern Qi's gaze fell on Qin Yin's body. He found that this beautiful young hunter girl had already put on a cloak. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, her beautiful figure was still enchanting. The coarse animal skin armor wrapped around her small waist and brought out her twin peaks. Qin Yin's figure was much better than it had been 4 years ago. Huan of Northern Qi stared in fascination. It wasn't until his wrist touched the back of the horse and sent a sharp pain that he came to his senses. However, he didn't know that the reason he had broken his wrist was because he had thought too much. Xiao Yin, we're going. Lin Muyu looked at the map in her hands. Today's travel is 600 li. After nightfall, we'll reach the White Leaves City outside the White Leaves Forest. Then, we'll enter the legendary Forbidden Land. Let's go. I can endure exhaustion. Okay, let's go. They sped up and left the guest house in the blink of an eye. Chapter 5:14. When it was almost dusk, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin finally left the official road and came to a small town on the south side of the road for a short rest and supplies. There was no more road ahead, and a vast expanse of White Leaves Forest was waiting for them there. White Leaves City was a small town on the eastern border of Red Mountain County. It was also the easternmost city among the 4 provinces of Iha country. White Leaf City was not considered rich, and it was only a small city with less than 100,000 people. The people in this city made a living by mining, fishing, and hunting. To the north of White Leaves Forest was a continuous mountain range called White Mountain. The mountain was silver in color, and it was a natural silver mine. Legend had it that out of 100,000 people in White Leaves City, 50,000 were miners, another 30,000 were hunters, and the remaining 20,000 were fishermen. After entering the city, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's attire did not attract much attention. Moreover, this kind of small town at the border would not put anyone on the wanted list, so they did not need to care about the disputes between the empire and Iha country. The largest inn in the city had been booked by the son of a rich mining family in White Leaves City for a banquet, so Lin Muyu and Qin Yin could only stay in another inn in White Leaves City called 10,000 Miles Inn. As the name suggested, most of the people who came here were people who came from afar to look for treasures. In fact, the eastern part of White Leaves Forest was the forbidden area, White Leaves Forest. Wild beasts ran rampant in White Leaves Forest, and there were also many spiritual beasts. Most of the spiritual stones needed by Iha country's practitioners came from White Leaves Forest. After they settled in, they asked the innkeeper to feed the horses. It was already dark, and Lin Muyu still needed to replenish some other things. A sturdy tent. The strong wind in winter was very strong, and a tent that was not sturdy enough could not be used in the wild. In addition, they needed a pot and seasonings. Who knew how long they would stay in White Leaves Forest? In addition, they needed to buy some dry food, such as some air-dried steamed buns, to fill their stomachs, because they could not cook with an open fire at any time. At night, the White Leaves Forest was bustling with noise and excitement. Red lanterns were hung high up in the sky. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin walked side by side on the street, enjoying the rare peace. Qin Yin gently held onto Lin Muyu's wrist, her beautiful face full of smiles. She was intoxicated by the fragrance of the buns on the street. Not far away was the most famous brothel in White Leaf City. A group of gorgeously dressed courtesans were trying to attract customers by the roadside, and a brothel keeper was holding a fan in her hand, shouting to the passing customers, "Hey, customer, come in and have a cup of hot wine. The wind is biting cold, and you must be tired from the journey. Our girls here are proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and other arts. Their figures are slim, and their dancing skills are excellent. Come and take a look. Our girls are not only good at dancing, but they are also well-rounded and considerate. If you don't believe me, you can come and touch them to see if they are real or not. Hey, handsome, you must be tired from hunting. Come in and have some fun." The brothel keeper's eyes lit up when she saw Lin Muyu. She almost said that this young master was free. However, Qin Yin held onto Lin Muyu's hand tightly. Her beautiful eyes swept across the courtesans, full of wariness, as if she was afraid that these prostitutes would snatch Lin Muyu away. On the side, a few mercenaries carrying battle axes and giant swords entered the brothel with smiles on their faces. One of them, a one-eyed man, chuckled, "It's rare for us to meet a woman, so what if we get drunk for a night? Brothers, let's enjoy ourselves to the fullest tonight. Brothel keeper, get us all the prettiest girls here." "All right, sir. Please wait for a moment, the girls will be here soon." Lin Muyu glanced at the brothel from the corner of her eyes and couldn't help but snort, shallow. Qin Yin, on the other hand, pouted. "Humph, you're still talking about it. If it wasn't me, but you, Commander Feng, Zhang Wei, Situ Sen, and the others had come, wouldn't you guys have gone in to have some fun?" "Of course not, am I that kind of person?" Lin Muyu said righteously, "I've never been to such a place." "Xiao Yin, don't think of me as those people." "Humph, is that so?" Qin Yin squinted her beautiful eyes and smiled, "I don't believe that my brother Yu is so upright. You and General Feng have been to such places in the capital. Don't think that I don't know, my eyes are very wide." Lin Muyu was shocked, "I I only went to such places to drink. Xiao Yin, don't think too much. Only Brother Feng would do something like hugging a courtesan and dancing, is that so? Humph, I'll believe you this time. Looking at Lin Muyu's frightened look, Qin Yin couldn't help but feel funny. She suddenly stopped, opened her arms to hug him, and whispered in Lin Muyu's ear, "Big idiot, is Xiao Yin such an open-minded person? Although I don't know the rules of your hometown, in our Qin Empire, it's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, so Xiao Yin can rest assured that you and Xiao Shi will go to Qihai province together. But, you have to remember that Xiao Yin is narrow-minded. I can only tolerate Xiao Shi. I can't tolerate other women." Lin Muyu couldn't help being moved. She reached out and hugged Qin Yin's slender waist. While secretly admiring the feeling, she said, "Don't worry. In my hometown, although there is no longer a practice of having 3 wives and 4 concubines, Xiao Yin is so good that I feel that I have everything with you. My heart can't accommodate too many people." "Is that so? Then what about Xiao Shi?" Qin Yin's beautiful eyes were filled with slyness. As for Xiao Shi, Lin Muyu's eyes flickered. "Let's see how she performs, humph, you womanizer. How dare you speak so righteously?" Qin Yin laughed and scolded him, waving her fists, wanting to hit him. Lin Muyu hurriedly dodged. A man and a woman chased each other on the streets of Whiteleaf City. Qin Yin's bell-like laughter seemed to affect the mood of the people who were hurrying along, making people feel that this small city at the border was actually in the mood of spring. Achoo! Inside Zetian Palace, Feng Jixing, who was dressed in a white robe, was sitting there with a spiritual brush in his hand. He was carefully rubbing the heavenly book model that Qin Yin had left behind. After a sudden sneeze, he frowned and said, "Who's talking bad about me? It's most likely that bastard Zhang Wei. I only banned him from drinking wine, but he actually dares to talk bad about me behind my back. He's really insolent." Beside the throne, Tang Xiaoxi had already fallen asleep with her head bent over the table. The imperial jade seal in front of her was glowing faintly. In her sleep, Tang Xiaoxi dreamed of spring and flowers blooming. She dreamed that there were actually roasted chickens on the trees. She cheered excitedly as she picked the fruits and ate the chicken wings. As she ate and ate, she suddenly woke up. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and realized that it was just a dream. She couldn't help but feel disappointed and said, "So it's just a dream." Feng Jixing raised his head and looked at her. Seeing that she was very disappointed, he smiled and said, "Princess Shi, did you dream of you? Why are you so disappointed? You must have dreamed of that brat, you." "No, I dreamed of food." Tang Xiaoxi's pretty face blushed. Feng Jixing was silent and actually had nothing to say. "Boss, how much is this wok?" Lin Muyu asked. The chubby boss walked forward, and a sinister smile immediately appeared on his face. "Young master, you have a good eye. This wok is a steel wok made by a skilled craftsman from the western regions. It won't rust no matter how many times you cook it. It's very hard, and it's 2 Jin coins for one. If you include the stand, it's 3 Jin coins. This is a steel wok." Lin Muyu was shocked. An ordinary iron wok is at most 10 Jin coins, but you're selling this steel wok for 2 Jin coins? Who are you trying to fool? "Young master, you don't know." The boss said, "This wok conducts heat quickly, and the workmanship is exquisite. This kind of steel was originally used to forge high-class knight swords from the Iha Empire. It won't bend even after 100 times. If you don't believe me, young master, try it. If you can bend the handle of this wok, I'll give it to you for free. If you can't bend it, you must buy this wok. Is that so?" Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh in his heart. There was a path to heaven, but you didn't take it. Instead, you barged into hell. Qin Yin smiled at the side and didn't say anything. She just watched Lin Muyu pretend. Swoosh! An invisible king's fighting flame appeared between the fingers of Lin Muyu's left hand. He lightly grabbed the handle of the steel wok and exerted a little force. The handle immediately bent. Oh my God! The boss was dumbfounded. This is impossible. Even the general of the military governor's office can't bend it. Lin Muyu quickly bent the handle of the steel wok again. He lifted the wok and took a stand. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your gift, boss. I will always remember your kindness." The boss was speechless. He just watched as this rascal took away the steel wok and the stand. He looked up at the sky and sighed. "You brat, how dare you take away my steel wok? Don't be fooled by the pretty girl behind you. I curse you to be impotent for the rest of your life." On the street, Lin Muyu happily carried the steel wok and suddenly shivered. He couldn't help but say, "I keep feeling like someone is cursing me. I wonder which bastard is it?" Qin Yin smiled and said, "Look over there. Someone is setting up a stall." "Is that so?" The two of them quickly went over to watch. They saw 3 to 5 people surrounded by the crowd. These people were all wearing soft armor and holding steel sabers. There was a mercenary emblem on their shoulders. They were mercenaries who didn't have enough money to travel and were selling their skills here. Buzz, 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 one of the mercenaries brandished his saber in a mighty manner. True energy was enshrouded in it. Lin Muyu could easily identify his strength. He was at the 3rd level of the Earth realm and was able to defeat an elite. TSK, it was rare to see such an elite in such a small city. Right at this moment, an elegant young master holding an iron fan sneered and said, "Showy but impractical. Useless." This handsome young master had a jade-like face and was very handsome. However, the hostility in his eyes was very strong. His cultivation shouldn't be low. There was milky white air flowing around him. He was an elite with battle armor. He was at least at the 2nd level of the heaven realm. Moreover, Lin Muyu could clearly sense the cultivation of a middle-aged man in plain clothes behind this handsome young master. Although he suppressed the fluctuations of his aura, Lin Muyu could still sense the domain power he released. He was actually a sanctuary. Who were these people? Right at this moment, the middle-aged sanctuary said in a low voice, "Young master, let's go. We're setting off for the White Leaves Forest tomorrow. There's nothing to see with these small tricks. Let's rest early." "Okay." The young master turned around and smiled. "Will father's men arrive tomorrow morning?" "Yes." "That's good. Let's go back." "Yes." These people didn't notice the hunter siblings, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, because they looked too inconspicuous. Moreover, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had a profound mental cultivation method to hide their auras. "Who is this person? He looks familiar," Qin Yin said. Lin Muyu frowned and clenched her fists. She leaned close to Qin Yin's ear and said in a low voice, "There's only one person who proclaims himself king in the Yihe nation, Qin Yi. If I'm not mistaken, this young master should be the son of Qin Yi, one of the 7 marshals, Qin Huan. Otherwise, why would they send a sanctuary to protect him?" "Qin Huan?" Qin Yin frowned and didn't say anything else. She actually met Qin Yi's son in White Leaves City. Enemies really were bound to meet. Chapter 5:15. After returning to the inn, they each began to cultivate. Lin Muyu sat cross-legged on the bed. After circulating the Vajra protection mantra 7 times, a warm current slowly flowed from his meridians into his qi, causing his entire body to tremble. The warm current rapidly circulated in his qi, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into the shape of a golden Buddha. This was the Arhat's reincarnation. He had finally stepped into the fourth layer of the Vajra protection mantra. Oh, taking a deep breath, the Vajra protection mantra condensed on every inch of his skin, greatly increasing his defensive capabilities. This was also the strength of the Vajra protection mantra. Without circulating it, he could automatically circulate a small amount of Do Qi to protect his body. This way, even if he was ambushed in a hurry, he could still protect himself. After letting out a long sigh, Lin Muyu lay on the bedding behind him, thinking about Qin Huan and the others he had just met. Besides Qin Huan, there were quite a few people following him. After all, he was one of the 7 marshals of the Iha kingdom, and was also Qin Yi's only son. It was impossible not to send experts to protect him. Just now, if Lin Muyu had made a move, he might have been able to kill Qin Huan, but he and Qin Yin would not have been any better off. They might not have been able to go to the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest to compete with the experts of the Iha Kingdom for the Heavenly Tomes. Of course, there was an even more important reason why Lin Muyu did not make a move. Within the Spirit Pulse technique, there was an aura that was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. This aura was extremely well hidden, and sometimes the Spirit Pulse technique could not detect it. However, the power of this aura was extremely pure, and faintly revealed a holy quality. It should be divine power. This made Lin Muyu even more astonished. Could it be that Luo Lan had come? If that was really the case, then the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest would really be a disaster. But as the saying goes, since you've already come, you still have to go. After a good night's rest, we'll set off tomorrow morning and enter the White Leaves Forest. Early the next morning, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin woke up one after another. They had a rather sound sleep this time. Their mental and physical powers had been nurtured very well, which could be seen from Qin Yin's face that was in high spirits. After a simple breakfast, they set off with some dry rations in their Qinkuan bag. They rode on 2 war horses and went straight out of the city, heading straight for the White Leaves Forest. The winter morning was cold and gloomy. A thick fog filled the forest. From afar, one could hear the sound of hooves and the laughter of mercenaries coming from the other side of the forest. Lin Muyu frowned. It seemed like the news of the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest had already spread like wildfire. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many mercenaries that would risk their lives out of desperation. He opened the map scroll and carefully examined it. He couldn't help but secretly complain, saying, "Shao Yin, the White Leaves Forest is really too big. From north to south, it's over 300 li long, and from east to west, it's almost 1,000 li long. However, we don't know the exact location of the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. What should we do?" Qin Yin pursed her red lips. "I don't know either. Perhaps, we should wait and travel with someone who knows the news." "Travel with someone?" Lin Muyu was surprised. "You're saying, we should join those mercenaries?" "No, mercenaries are cunning and full of schemes. Working with mercenaries is no different from asking a tiger for its skin. Why don't we first familiarize ourselves with the terrain at the edge of the White Leaves Forest, and first inquire about the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest?" That's fine." Within the dense fog, 2 war horses slowly advanced through the forest. Very soon, there was no road ahead, and the war horses could only grope their way through the shrubbery. Near noon, the sun dispersed the fog. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had already entered 50 li into the depths of the White Leaves Forest. On the way, they encountered a few mercenaries, but they were not easy to deal with. The 2 of them deliberately avoided them. Further ahead, a large road appeared in the forest. It was hard to imagine that there would be a large road in this kind of place. Thud, 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 the sound of horse hooves rapidly approached. Without waiting for Lin Muyu and Qin Yin to retreat, a group of nearly 20 soldiers galloped over. They wore the armor of the Iha country, and were the patrolling soldiers of the Swift White Province. The person leading the group was a man wearing the insignia of a centurion. His hand rested on his sword, and he loudly said, "Wait a moment." Lin Muyu stopped her war horse, turned around, and said, "Is something the matter, General?" The centurion's gaze swept over Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, and he said, "Could it be that you're both blind? Don't you know that the White Leaves Forest, the forbidden area of the Iha country, is further east?" "We know." Qin Yin urged her horse forward, and respectfully said, "This little girl and my brother are here to hunt for some precious beast bones to use as medicine to treat father's illness. We hope that milord can let us pass. We really have no choice." "Is that so?" The centurion had the appearance of a wretch. His frivolous gaze swept over Qin Yin's well-developed figure, and he chuckled. "You're a very sensible girl, but ferocious beasts run amok in the White Leaves Forest. Once you pass through this forest, there will be spirit beasts with thousands of years of cultivation. With your skills, you'll only be sending yourselves to death. In my opinion, why don't you follow me back to the camp first?" Qin Yin was startled, and she said, "Milord, father is seriously ill, and we're in a hurry to treat him. We really can't afford to delay any longer, so please let us go." "This little girl thanks you, milord." Lin Muyu sneered, and she took out a bag of Jinin coins from her bosom. There were 30 to 40 of them, and she directly threw them over. "Is this enough?" The centurion caught the bag with practiced ease, opened it, and took a glance. Immediately, his face was filled with joy, and he laughed out loud. "This young master is really generous," but, his gaze was thick with greed, and he said, "But you insist on entering the depths of the White Leaves Forest. I suspect that you're spies from the Empire. Men, bring these two back to the camp, and send the girl directly to my tent." "Yes, milord." A group of Iha Nation soldiers urged their horses forward. Naturally, Lin Muyu also knew that she couldn't be merciful. With a clang, she unsheathed her star's sword and directly pressed it against the centurion's chest, leaving him no time to react. Looking at his panicked gaze, Lin Muyu smiled faintly. "I originally wanted to spare your dog life, but unfortunately, you're so lustful and greedy. People like you don't deserve to die, so I can only enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Young hero, spare." Before the centurion could finish his sentence, Lin Muyu's sword had already pierced through his chest. Blood flowed out, and his heavy body fell from his horse, dead. "This brat killed milord, kill him for me." A group of Iha Nation's cavalrymen angrily pulled out their swords. They had always guarded the outer perimeter of the forbidden area, and they had repeatedly exploited the cultivators who passed by. They didn't expect to meet a contemporary powerhouse like Lin Muyu. "Shao Yin, retreat!" Lin Muyu shouted in a low voice, wanting to test the power of his move. Qin Yin quickly urged her horse to move about 100 meters away. She was very obedient. "You're courting death." Lin Muyu suddenly shook his arm, and instantly, the Star Technique's Level 5 Ice Spirit Astral Power danced around his fist. He raised his fist, spurred on the Snowstride warhorse, and with the chilly astral power, he passed through more than 20 cavalrymen at lightning speed. Whoosh! The air and time seemed to have frozen. Lin Muyu and Takshu passed through like an ice arrow, and the warhorse left traces of frost on the ground. Behind them, there was a hissing sound, and streams of icy air rose, freezing the Iha Nation cavalrymen into ice cubes. In the next moment, the ice cubes all shattered, and not a single drop of blood could be seen. They had all died under the Star Technique's Level 5 Ice Jade Snow. "Oh my God!" Qin Yin's mouth was wide open. She looked at the bloodless killing scene, but she was very shocked. This was the first time she had seen such a scene, and the killer was Lin Muyu, who was very close to her. "Rustle, rustle," Lin Muyu waved his fist, dispersing the ice spirit astral power around his fist. He looked at the ground full of human and horse corpses, and couldn't help but frown. He said, "This move is actually so powerful." Qin Yin pursed her red lips and said, "Big brother you." Lin Muyu looked up at her and said, "Xiao Yin also thinks this move is too cruel, right?" Qin Yin wanted to say something, but she didn't. It was a tacit agreement, but she couldn't stop Lin Muyu. After all, she knew that this was a chaotic world, and it was either killing or being killed. There was no order or law to speak of. Lin Muyu, on the other hand, readily said, "Actually, I also think this method of killing is too cruel. We should use it less in the future." "Don't worry, Xiao Yin. I don't want my hands to be stained with blood." "Yes, yes." Qin Yin smiled happily. "Then let's leave this place quickly. If someone sees us, I'm afraid we'll be wanted again." "Okay." The two of them quickly left the main road and went straight into the depths of the White Leaves forest. They didn't go too far when they suddenly heard the sound of hooves behind them. There were other humans coming, and from the looks of it, there were quite a few of them. "Are they chasing us?" Lin Muyu asked. Qin Yin shook her head. "Doesn't look like it." This group of people mostly wore soft armor, and some wore heavy armor with winter cloaks draped over them. However, none of them wore the insignia of the Iha nation or mercenaries, so it was presumed that they weren't soldiers. Moreover, there were actually people in the group who wore brocade robes embroidered with gold patterns. Their hairpins were also made of jade. They were completely different from Qin Yin, who only had a simple piece of beast bone as her hair ornament. Of course, Lin Muyu's attire was even simpler. He had a head of messy but handsome short hair. This was his standard hairstyle. After coming to the Shattered Cauldron realm for so many years, he still wasn't used to having long hair, so he maintained the habit of cutting his hair short. However, he still looked handsome and free. Just this unruly hairstyle alone had won him many female fans in Lanyan City, although it was useless. "The two of you, please wait." A man in a brocade robe at the very front of the group shouted. Since they couldn't run away, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin didn't want to run either. This group of people only seemed to have around 50 people, and it seemed like the strongest among them wasn't that strong. Why would two divine domain experts be afraid of them? Thus, they both reined in their horses and waited for this group of people to approach. After they approached, this young man in a brocade robe, who looked to be around 30 years old, cupped his hands and said, "May I ask the two of you, are you going to search for the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest in the White Leaves Forest?" Chapter 5:16 Heavenly Tome Forest of Monoliths. Qin Yin blinked her large, sparkling eyes that were like black gems. She shook her head and said, "I don't know what kind of place that is. My brother and I came here to hunt a fierce beast called the Hanging Eye Beast, and use its bones as medicine to treat my father's illness. Is there something you need, young master?" Lin Muyu was dumbstruck. Qin Yin's words were as pure as ever, and her starry eyes were filled with sincerity. This girl was practically a natural-born actor. With this kind of acting, if she were to return to Earth, she would become famous without any packaging. Then, what would China's film scene have to do with FBB and LBB? The noble youth smiled and cupped his hands. "The White Leaves Forest is filled with danger. Since that's the case, why don't we travel together? At least we can look after each other. What does young lady think?" Qin Yin squinted her beautiful eyes. "But I don't even know you. First time unfamiliar, second time familiar." The noble youth respectfully said, "This one is called Lu Yu, the son of the governor of the Swift White Province's Hai Deer County, Lu Zhuang. This time, under the orders of my lord father, we have gathered a group of heroes to come to the White Leaves Forest in search of a treasured land isolated from the rest of the world, the Heavenly Tome Forest of Monoliths. The group of friends behind me are mostly people I brought from Hai Deer County, and there are also some I made on the road. If the two of you don't mind, how about we travel together?" Qin Yin looked at Lin Muyu with an inquiring gaze. Lin Muyu muttered to herself, then said, "Young Master Lu Yu, what kind of place is this heavenly tome forest of monoliths you speak of? Do you know its specific location?" "I know the location, but I'm not very sure," Lu Yu said. At this moment, a burly man behind Lu Yu walked forward with a battle axe in his hand. He laughed and said, "Young master, there's no need to speak so much with these two hunters. Our group is made up of cultivators. Even if they want to join us, they still have to have the ability." "Is that so?" Lin Muyu could not help but smile. "If I want to join this group, what kind of test do I have to accept?" "Just eat 3 of my axes and not die." The burly man laughed. Lin Muyu wrinkled her eyebrows and said, "Fine, I'll take 3 of your axes." "Come." Lu Yu hurriedly said, "Young master, don't be rash. This Zhang Laoxi's axe is very powerful. It wouldn't be good if there's an accident." It seemed that this Lu Yu was a kind and generous person. Lin Muyu secretly praised him, but she still took out her stellar sword and jumped off the horse. Holding the sword in front of her, she smiled and said, "Zhang Laoxi, come, let me see how strong your 3 axes are." "Hey!" A trace of killing intent flashed in Zhang Laoxi's eyes as he said with a smile, "You're courting death. If I cleave you in half with my axe, your beautiful sister will be mine." Qin Yin couldn't help but smile. She gracefully stood beside Lin Muyu and said, "If you can really defeat him, I'll be your concubine. If you can't defeat him, you'll have to call me grandaunt whenever you see me in the future. How about it?" "Okay." Zhang Laoxi's face was full of fierceness. He raised his battle axe and layers of frost qi surrounded the axe. His body was even plated with layers of qi armor. He was actually a battle saint at the 3rd level of the Earth realm. I really couldn't tell. Lin Muyu's aura sank, and the image of the Vajra Arhat appeared in her sea of energy. It was the power of the 4th level of the Vajra body protection. She raised her sword with one hand and used the scabbard to block Zhang Laoxi's attack. Bang! With a single strike, a wave of frost swept out, and a few of the cultivators in front were pushed back by the impact. Lin Muyu, on the other hand, stood there motionlessly, holding her undamaged long sword. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Zhang Laoxi, on the other hand, was pushed back a few steps on the snowy ground. His face was full of suspicion. That brat clearly didn't even use his true qi, so why was there such a strong rebound force coming from his sword? How is this possible? Zhang Laoxi's face was full of doubt. He regained his composure and roared with even more true qi. He rushed forward on the snowy ground and roared, "Take this daddy spiral slash. Die." The battle axe spun a few times and slashed at Lin Muyu's scabbard. Lin Muyu secretly laughed. This blockhead wasn't stupid when he was killing people. He even knew to use the spiral force to increase the impact of the battle axe. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong opponent. Just as the battle axe was about to touch the scabbard, Lin Muyu's wrist turned skillfully. The sword dragged the opponent's battle axe with a strong suction force and spun it in the air. Bang! Zhang Laoxi's battle axe directly hit the ground, causing mud and snow to fly. A strange suction force came from the battle axe, causing him to be unable to stop his momentum at all. He fell to the ground, his forehead hitting the handle of the battle axe, and blood flowed out. Lin Muyu still held the long sword in her hand and stood in the same place. She smiled and said, "How is it? Do you want a 3rd strike?" Zhang Laoxi scrambled to his feet and looked at Lin Muyu suspiciously. He couldn't tell how strong this person was, so he shook his head and said, I'm not competing anymore. If you want to join our team, then join us." Heh! Lin Muyu snickered. Lu Yu looked as if he had obtained a treasure. He said, "I didn't expect this young master to have such a secret art. This is great. Welcome to our team." May I know your and your sister's names? Lin Muyu said, My name is Lin Yen. My sister is Lin Yin. Oh, young Master Lin, welcome to our team. Shall we set off to the depths of the White Leaves Forest? All right. With the addition of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, the team seemed to have gained some confidence. Lu Yu was even more polite to Lin Muyu. He said, I saw young Master Lin Yan's moves just now. You've really reached the perfect state of cultivation. It's admirable. No, it's just a small trick. If young Master Lin Yan doesn't mind, when we return to Jianghu County, I will recommend you to my father and let you be the captain of the city patrol. What do you think? Lu Yu seemed to really want to rope in Lin Muyu. Lin Muyu shook her head. No, I'm already a guard of the Li residence. Which Li residence? Young Master Li's was mansion. Lu Yu was shocked. Could it be the guard of the Li residence in black who defeated Huan of Northern Qi? Lin Muyu was also shocked. The news spread so fast. Lu Yu nodded. Everyone in the Swift White Province knows of this rumor. A guard of the Li residence in black defeated Huan of Northern Qi, who had a low-grade earthly scroll. He scared the mercenary leader Lu Zan to death with just his aura. I didn't expect to meet you here. You. Young master, didn't you say you're a hunter? Lin Muyu quickly said, yes, my family is poor. I'm a hunter and a guard at the same time. I see. Lu Yu praised. Filial piety is the most important of all virtues. Young Master Lin Yan has hidden his abilities well. You're a good example for us to learn from. Qin Yin tried her best to hold back her laughter. She felt that the two of them were shameless. One of them was trying his best to flatter her, while the other was trying his best to talk nonsense. Zhang Laozi, on the other hand, carried his battle axe and angrily urged his horse to follow behind. He muttered to the manservants beside him, he's just a wild brat who won by trickery. I really don't know why young master thinks so highly of him. Humph, when we really meet a spirit beast later, I want to see how this brat's mask will be exposed. The servants all agreed. Yes, let's see if he's really capable and yet he's still bragging. Not far ahead, the snow on the ground lessened. Another 10 kilometers, sparse greenery appeared around them. There were leaves on the trees, and fruits appeared in the bushes. Another 10 kilometers, the surroundings were completely in the mood of spring. It didn't look like it was half winter at all. It's winter, but it's warm and green here. It's really strange. Lu Yu gently placed his palm on the sword at his waist. Everyone, be alert. Be careful. Yes, young master. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin looked at each other. Logically speaking, this was not a valley and there was no terrain to protect them. There should not be such a strange phenomenon happening here at all. There was only one explanation, the power of the heavens and the earth. Yes, Lin Muyu had used the heavenly tome of life, so she could understand why such a strange phenomenon had occurred. The forest of heavenly tome monoliths was definitely in this forest. Moreover, to be able to make a forest of 100 li show signs of life, the might of this heavenly tome of life was just too shocking. Suddenly, Lin Muyu's spiritual sense detected a tyrannical qi. She immediately creased her brow and said, Shao Yin, be careful. It seems like something is watching us. Qin Yin obediently nodded and urged her horse closer to Lin Muyu. Lu Yu stared blankly. What's watching us? I don't know either. In any case, it's pretty strong. Just then, a hissing sound came from the nearby underbrush. The grass seemed to have collided with something and slowly tilted and twisted. In the next moment, a huge pitch-black snake suddenly raised its head from the underbrush. It opened its mouth and bit one of the Lu residence's guards off his warhorse. Venomous green fangs spurted out, and the guard fell to the ground, trembling as he lost his life. "Careful, it's a venomous snake." Lu Yu hurriedly pulled out his long sword. Zhang Laosi also raised his battle axe and charged over, yelling, "It's a giant viper." Heavens, why isn't a venomous snake hibernating in this kind of weather? Get me a bow and arrow and kill it. The giant viper was a snake-type spirit beast. However, the giant viper in front of them had 3 golden patterns on its forehead. It was a 3,000-year-old spirit beast. After biting 3 guards to death in an aggressive manner, the giant viper was attacked by a group of guards from the Lu residence with bows and arrows. Accompanied by whooshing sounds, the arrows bounced off the giant viper's body, but they could not penetrate it at all. Die. Zhang Laosi's cultivation was the highest. With a roar, he jumped down from his warhorse and smashed his axe into the giant viper's head. Immediately, its scales cracked and blood sprayed out. However, it was only a heavy injury, not a fatal one. The giant viper turned its head and bit Zhang Laosi's thigh. Ah, a miserable howl, like that of a pig being slaughtered, came from the forest. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.